Here. Commissioners, as you know, the purpose of the special meeting today is solely for the purposes of going to our budget workshop. All of the normal rules are suspended. And with that, we're going to begin with a presentation by village administrator.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming down today. This is obviously a little bit different from what we've done in the past. Matter of fact, I think it's different from anything that we've ever done, isn't it, Mayor? Have we always done these in the evening?
Weekends.
Weekends, okay. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The biggest one being that we noticed that at 7 o'clock when we try to do these, everybody's already been working all day. And the patience level may be a little bit less. The desire to maybe speed through the process a little bit amps up a little bit. And recognizing that this is a very important process that the village goes through every year, making sure that everybody was at their best as we got into the project. I certainly want to start by thanking both Judy and Tish for getting all this together for us. The amount of work, I mean, if you just look at the budget books that each of you have, the amount of work that goes into this process is extraordinary. But I can't stop at just thanking Judy and Tish, because each of our department heads not only worked hard on their specific piece of the budget, but they worked hard all last fiscal year to keep their budgets in line. And in a community where we struggle with our revenue side, the department heads have, again, this year, done an exemplary job of staying within, not only within their budget, but as you'll see in many cases, lowering their budgets to meet what Judy and I and Tish anticipated would be less revenues this year. I was thinking about this last night, and I'm only bringing this up to remind not only all the elected officials, but certainly the audience. And I was thinking about it last night when I was supposed to be asleep. And I confirmed it this morning with Judy and Tish. There is not one single line item, either on the revenue side or the expense side, that we can put down on the paper on one day and say that's what the number's gonna be. Because everything is in a state of flux. Certainly all of the revenue. I've told the story, it'd be kind of nice to be at the school district, where their only source of revenue, primarily only source, is property taxes. We've got a pretty good idea what the property taxes are gonna be. For us, we have revenues coming from, I don't know how many line items, Judy will tell me here at some point, but all of those are historically educated estimations of what we think is going to happen. And we use a lot of tools to try to determine what that's going to be. IML, the Illinois Municipal League, helps us with some of the numbers. But a lot of it is trends, it's analysis, it's what we think is going to happen. It's new businesses in town, how they're going to affect the overall market. On the expense side, when we did the budget last year, probably starting in January or February of 2011, we had to guess what the price of fuel was going to be for that whole year, leading up to it's Monday. Monday was the end of the fiscal year. We had to guess what the price of fuel was going to be. And guess what? We guessed wrong. I didn't know it was going to be $4 a gallon. I don't think anybody in the room would have guessed that for the last 6 months of fiscal 2012, fuel was going to be up by 50, 75 cents, maybe $1 a gallon. So I just say that so that everybody is aware that this is not a cast in stone document. Not one line item on it is cast in stone. So when you know that and you recognize that, it becomes even more clear how hard each of the department heads work to keep it all where it needs to be enforced. With that, we'll start, unless there's any questions about that aspect, probably not. With that, we'll start the presentation. This is fiscal 2012 revenues versus the budget estimate. And you can see that in our budget, she doesn't have the number in here, but it's what, 17.6 or something, Judy? Somewhere in there. And it looks like our revenue is going to be just less than what we projected. And I hate to say things like, not a bad guess, but it's pretty accurate indicator of what we thought more than a year ago of what our revenues were going to be. And before you flip it, Sally, obviously I'll make this available to each of you. You can see the various classes, miscellaneous fines and penalties, fees for service, state taxes, things of that sort. Okay, so. Here's the revenue variances. We were down a total of $444,000 or 2.5%. A lot of that was in red light tickets. But we all know that the longer a red light camera is in place, the less revenue it makes because people become more aware that it's there and drive safer. They don't run the red light anymore. In addition to that, our red light cameras at Roosevelt and Harlem were out of service for 8 months, Jim? At least 8 months while they did a Roosevelt Road project in Oak Park and Merwin. So whenever they're working on those intersections, the cameras go down. Traffic tickets were down now 10%, utility franchise taxes 4%, and fees for service 9%. Waterfront revenues were up, and that's obviously because of the increase that we got from the city of Chicago. Here's what we did. I mentioned earlier that the department heads all worked very hard to understand that revenues are going to be lighter this year. What can I do as a department head and as a commissioner in charge of a specific department to make sure that we're matching? And you'll see in public affairs that they were able to cut $179,000, clerk's office $143,000, health and safety $25,000, streets and public improvements $98,000. Public property, they went up a little, and I can explain that because it looks bad there. There's a couple of things there, most notably fuel. I think fuel is up $65,000 over what we budgeted, Judy. That's a big number. In addition to that, the new sign at the community center, which will be lit by the end of this week, probably Friday, I think we're going to light it up. In the budget, we had it in there. Well, actually, it wasn't in the budget. There's a revenue side to that. It's $30,000 or so for the community center sign. On another side of the budget, on the income side, we got $30,000 for a settlement of a lawsuit that we had. So that's an easily explainable number. Go ahead, son. General fund revenue versus expenses, a 6-year trend, and you can see that every year, with the exception of fiscal 08, every year we're a little bit low on the revenue side in 9, just a touch low in 10, but 11 and 12, we believe that we've ended up just above less expenses to revenue. And we're predicting a very small, you'll see it in another slide or two, a very small surplus for fiscal 2013.
Tim, what's the white, the third column there?
That's the,
Oh, that's okay. That's over.
Okay.
Got it.
General fund revenue analysis. Okay. I'll go through it quickly. You can see that budget versus the projection, we were down a little bit in property taxes. We're going to be up just a little bit, you know, if everything works out okay. Again, keep in mind fiscal year ended Monday night, so we're still trying to collect that data for this last month. Down a little bit in utility franchise tax. Permit fees were up a little bit. Down a little bit fees for service, fines and penalties were down. All in all, down that 444,000, and that's just a little bit of a breakup. On our fiscal 2013 estimates, up 3.7. State taxes, we're estimating we're going to go up 10.7%. That's a big number, but I can explain it. Number one, Hawk has their whole other side of their dealership open now. The Jeep side is open. Chrysler just posted last night or at the end of that quarter, their biggest profit quarter in a whole bunch of years. Walmart, not only are they, I think they're all the way open now, aren't they, Steve? But close, they're in Walmart, right? Not only are they adding 30,000 square feet to their existing facility, which will of course mean more sales tax revenue, they've also been, in a lot of ways, shut down for the last 8 to 9 months. And certainly people were still shopping there, but from my old business, I can tell you when we used to work in jewel store parking lots, the amount of revenue that they lost just from having a few barricades up in a parking lot was astronomical. And that's why they would pay us all kinds of extra money to get in and get out. This store has been under construction with a major reconstruction project for most of the last year. We expect those revenues to come back up significantly. Grand Appliance will be open by August 1st. Not a real big player, excuse me, he's not a Walmart or a car dealership, but he anticipates sales of, in his first year, $2 to $3 million a year. There's new businesses opening on Madison Street. Fiorenza's is opening up now. There's a multitude of new restaurants and storefronts being filled, and all of those are little players. But what that tells Judy and I, and certainly the mayor and Commissioner Hosty, as we work through the revenue side of this, things are looking up. People are investing in Fiorenza's. I've heard estimates anywhere up to $500,000. They invested on the inside of that building. $650 on the inside of Fiorenza's. Okay, that's a huge number. The new store, the new one going in at Circle and Madison. I don't know what that estimate is for building that place out, but it will be in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. Grand Appliance told me that just Monday I met with them for a few minutes. They estimate $300,000 to $400,000. And what that tells me, just anecdotally, is that people are investing again. And if they're investing again, they see something happening in the sales side. So I'm good with that number. Utility franchise taxes, we're predicting up a bit. License permit fees, that looks funny. It's down 10%. And I have to tell you that's because there was one big player last year in building permits, and that was Walmart. The permit fees for a building and a construction project of that sort are huge, and they made a big difference in that number last year. Fees for service up a little bit, fines and penalties up a little bit, and the miscellaneous stuff we're predicting down, just a slow amount. Revenue trends, you can see that each year, well, they have it actually. Down in 08, up a little bit in 9, down a little bit in 10. About flat the next two, although 12 is up a little bit in terms of our projection, and we're predicting a better year for fiscal 13. State taxes trends. Same, look what happened to us, 08. You can get pretty used to living on that kind of revenue. And then in 9, it came down a little bit. Okay, wake up call, wow. In 10, it came really down. Then we started a very small gradual increase until we get here to our expectations for this year. Sales tax history, again, looking all the way back to fiscal 06, 3.2 million flat. A little bit of a hit in sales tax in 08, big hit going into 09, bigger hit into 10. Then we started coming back up a little bit. But when I say a little hit, I might mean $100,000 or something like that. And obviously, $100,000 is a big number. In a $22 million a year budget, it's not a great big number. But when I'm dealing with a margin of revenue to expenses of 100,000, that's huge. So if those kind of things happen, it's the difference between being in the black or red. Same thing with utility franchise, you'll just kind of see the trends over the year. And really what we're doing is just saying, okay, things have been on the upswing since 2010. We're continuing that upswing. There is nothing on the horizon that I'm seeing right now, and I share this obviously with Judy and Tish, and certainly in all the conversations I've had with Mark and the mayor about it. I don't see anything on the horizon that makes me believe we're in for another downturn in fiscal 13. Here's the highlights. We're estimating our revenues at 17.9. Increases include sales taxes up 500, estimated utility taxes up 100, and garbage recycling waste up 0.3%. That's a contract that we have, so we know that's going to go up. Okay. Projected revenue surplus, 91,000. Okay. Remember what I just said about sales taxes? And again, something like Walmart being closed for a week or two, where for some reason they had to shut the store down all the way for a week or two. That would make a big dent in our budget. One of the car dealerships closing for a week or two because of some kind of, I don't know, storm damage or something like that. That would make a significant difference in our budget. And that's how closely we watch revenue and expenses, because it matters that much. But public affairs, its total request, $988,100. It's $26,500 more, 2.8% than the fiscal 2012 budget. Here's what they are. Again, this year, I'm feeling comfortable cutting our legal fees. You'll probably recall that each of the years over the last, I guess this is the third time now, we've been able to cut legal service fees every year. Business agreements, that's going to be up $79,500 from actual, and that's because we added the Hawk Jeep dealership and Grand Appliance. Village council expenses, $18,000, and that covers our pricing for the Granicus system, the Mike Coyle, who does Comcast for us and gets us on, and the Verizon bill. And then I expect the mayor will want to talk to you all about public information and policy. And that's a new line item this year. We put in a dollar amount of $50,000. And I guess what I'd ask you to do is let me go through the process. And then as each of you go through your individual departments, I'm sure the mayor will speak to you about that new line item. In the police department, the request is for $4,805,000. It's $172,000 or 3.7 more than the 2012 budget. It's wages. I mean, if you look at it, just the wages put it up 4.1% more. Nothing else has changed in the police department. They did an excellent job for us last year, staying not only within their budget, but under budget. And this year they did the same thing. They left everything the same for us. No new vehicles this year. They are bare bones, again. And really between Jim and Dora, I would say that, well, I can tell you for sure, anytime there's, I wouldn't even say an extraordinary expense, a normal expense, one of them, and certainly it's the same in all departments, are in the office with me and we're checking, you know, okay, should I get this or should I not? That's when I go to Judy and or Tish and we determine how the revenue is looking, and then we make a decision based on that. In the community center, the request is for $712,700. It's $65,200 more than the actual expenses from 12, but the associated revenue is up $87,900. based on full staffing for maximum capacity. It includes approximately $60,000 for a major senior trip. And I expect when we get back around again, I'd ask you to just sort of hold your questions if you can. When Karen gets ready to present, I think she'll talk to us a little bit about what that major trip is. Because I'm almost old enough, I think I can go. It does include the Rib Fest and the Farmers Market. There's financing for the bus we bought for them last year, which, by the way, is working out. You love that bus, don't you?
Love it.
Okay. And it's the RTA buses and drivers. In the clerk's office, $4,863,200. I don't know if we can beef too much about this one, guys. It's $37,500 less than 12,000 or fiscal 12 budget. It includes one vacancy to be filled. Increase in liability insurance, $8,300, but it's a decrease in workers' comp at $23,100, and a decrease in collection fees, $68,000. Fire department, $2,874,800, 5.4%. It's wages. So really, there's not much we can do. It does include one new vehicle for the deputy chief. And again, when we get around to Steve, he'll articulate a little bit why that vehicle is necessary. These are the loan payments on the vehicles that they have. It's their fire trucks. I think you have one big fire truck that has it, don't you, Steve? I think that's, yeah. And then the paramedic services contractually are going up this year. Public health and safety, $343,200. They're up $300 from their budget last year. And obviously the wages have gone up. They got some more payments for their 2 new vehicles we picked up last year. And the revenues are down, and that's primarily in building permit fees, probably on one permit. Wages are $4,700 less, and that's because we're missing one person down there. And I think our projection is that we're going to stay that way for the better part of this year, right, Steve? Or I think that's probably accurate.
This is one person included.
Say again?
It includes budget for
Okay.
vacancy.
Okay, so it's in there if we put her in there. Streets and public improvements, $1,473,200. It's $11,500 less, 0.08 than the fiscal 12 budget. $3,100 more, or 1.4%. It excludes Madison Street upgrades and maintenance. And the reason we've taken it out of there is because we put it in the VIP fund. Refuge removal we talked about, equipment loan payments, that's a sweeper. And we put in $10,000 for extraordinary storm-related expenses. Public property, $1,805,400. It's $32,900, or 1.9% more than the fiscal 12 budget. Wages, you can see, are $11,000 more. Includes fleet operations. A lot of this again is going to be gasoline. Street and traffic light maintenance is down $32,000 from actual. Property maintenance up $12,000. Fire department, public works, village hall, and police department. You can see how those numbers come.
Hey, Tim,
Yes.
when you look at the traffic light maintenance, is that down because of our potential LED conversion, or could that go further?
No, I guess I'd have to look into it more to see exactly why it's down, Mark. I can tell you one thing that we started doing, and that isn't all of that number. But one thing that God and I worked on over this last fiscal year, and it's been in place now for about 3 months, and it seems like the little thing really adds up, is we do all of our own locates now on street lighting. We've determined that our guys have the equipment, they have the knowledge, and so what happens when we get a Julie request, it comes in through our office anyway, John sees it. If it's an ordinary type of street light cabling request, where you pretty much see there's a light there, okay, the line must go here, our guys do that locate. And we probably did 2 or 3, maybe 4 months worth of locates where we never had to call Lyons Pinner to do that. We have it in our policy, I guess, but it's a verbal policy that if Rick and or Sal feel even remotely uncomfortable with the locate because they're afraid it might not be where they think it is, then we call Lyons Pinner. But every time Lyons Pinner comes out, it was $125. So we've saved significantly there. I don't know what all the other ones were. I'll tell
So
you.
there is a potential for more savings as you move forward.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely there is, and certainly, when the council sees the final presentation, I'm hopeful that we can get going here pretty quick on the conversion to LED. That's going to be a significant savings there, and that'll be part of the total package of savings. Waterfront revenues, you can see it gone up, and this is, the last part here obviously is the city of Chicago, and we're obviously anticipating that 25%. I think, Mayor, isn't it the first 2 years it's 25 and then 15 each year?
First year 25, then 15, 15, 15.
Okay, so 3 15s, and we'll have to see where that goes. Expenses. You can see it's 834,900 more. Revenues increased by over $1 million, 24.7%. Purchased water is going to be up 25% if the consumption level stays the same. Includes 111,700 interest payments to the IEPA, and not included are principal payments of 330,000. Cost of water versus other expenses. You could just see the graph there. We're obviously anticipating more revenues in 2013 over expenses. Total estimated revenues, 5.7, expenses, 5.1. Excess will enable repayment to VIP for previous water main improvements and allow for future improvements. What that means, folks, is that in years past, when we've needed water main improvements and not had any money or enough money in the water fund to pay for it, paper transferred the money out of our VIP fund to pay for those expenses. Now that the water fund is flush again, we're repaying VIP. Expenses, that's a really tough graph to see, but you can see that for the most part, there it is. I'm not going to explain line by line. It's a tough graph to see, but obviously you can see that we try really hard to keep our expenses lower, and we're anticipating up a little bit here and up in each of them, but minute. Budget per capita by department, and this is, did we use 2010? So 14,169 people. Okay, so for every person in town, the water department spends 324, administration side 408, police 341, community center 50, fire 202, health and safety 24, and public works 231,000. I love this slide. I always like to show this slide because you can see in the total budget that the village has on the revenue side, and we'll round it all off to say $18 million. The biggest piece of the pie goes towards wages and benefits. That's why it's so important when we negotiate contracts with all of our 6 unions. Because the majority of the village's budget goes towards wages. I'll just, one more second on that. Years ago, when I was an elected official and the village was having some pretty tough times on the revenue side, we did this exercise. And we determined the cost, and I called it at the time to just turn the lights on, which was pretty much make sure the police department could run, the fire department could run, and we did just enough to stay going. And we came up with those numbers, but that was well, it wasn't the first time we suspected it. We saw how much just employing people takes. And it's, as you can see, it's already a budget. General fund expenses, this is all for grants. Revenue, we're anticipating 200, yeah, this was last year's grants, right, Jude? I think.
It's next year's, I'm sorry.
Should be 2013. Okay. So grants that we have in line so far, 205, expenses 24, so we're looking at a little bit of a deficit there. Estimated VIP fund expenses, revenues 2.3, expenses 2.8. We're anticipating some expenses in the area of 472,000. We're not finalized, as you can see on that. Other funds, special revenue, total revenues 1.6, total expenditures 1.3, ending fund balances are over $1 million, and Judy, just in general, what are those? There they are. Okay, good. Debt service tips in the VIP, revenues 5.9, expenditures 5.6, means ending fund balances of in excess of $8 million. Pension costs, big numbers every year. 530,000 this year, going to fire, 673,900 to police. $1,204,000 in pension costs. That's just for police and fire. IMRF, let's add another 728,300 for IMRF. It's a total annual retirement cost in the village at just under $2 million. Here's the summary. Their homes. I think as each of you have gone through, department heads have gone through their sheets and made their requests, and the commissioners have gone through and looked not only at their department, but looked at other departments. There's not a lot of fat. There's not a lot of things to start cutting about. We not included in this budget any fee increases. Understanding that the village has already been forced, I guess is my best choice of words, to raise water in the village based on an invoice that comes to us every month from the city of Chicago. We have no other fee increases included. I believe I can substantiate it with data from Cranes and the IML, and anecdotally from Commissioner Hosty and the mayor. Our recovery is accelerating, feeling better about it. And I said that last year, that it's getting better, and the reality is that it is getting better. On January 1st of this year, you know, this increase that we got from the city is going to allow us to do some future water main improvements. And for the newer people in the room, I guess back in 2003 or 2004, the village did about half the town. Is that about right? With new water main? About half the town was changed from 4-inch water main to 8-inch water main. So in all those areas, we're good. But there's still a half a community that, well, I shouldn't say half, there's still a portion of the community that still has 4-inch water main that's probably original. And as that wears out to the point that it's not feasible anymore to fix it, those areas are going to have to be replaced. The money we're building up now is going to allow us to do that. Presentation. I'll answer any questions specifically about that presentation, but generally at this point, Mr. Mayor, you take over and we go department by department. So whatever you'd like to do.
We'll pause first and see if there's any questions regarding Representative Fusco.
One of the things I just want to add on the water mains is we did a all at once, but we have done replacements as other constructions occurred. you know, like Harvard was at, I mean,
Absolutely.
under that construction. So it's not like half the water mains have been untouched.
Right.
It's half were done at once, some were done prior, and now they're being addressed
Correct.
on it when the street's open basis or as needed. Because we did a lot on, was it Lathrop that we've had a lot of breaks and Des Plaines.
And we did a
So,
bunch on Randolph. We did about 150 feet on Randolph last year.
did Jackson when that was under
We
construction.
did Jackson in our budget this year. Matter of fact, it's been bid, and the work is scheduled for South Des Plaines. So, you know, we've been doing more as we go, and we've been doing it with not a lot of revenue.
I just want to make the point that we're not sitting on half of our mains ready to collapse, underpowered. It has been addressed or prior addressed. So we probably have a weakness, I'd say somewhere around 20% of our mains.
Yeah, I would say that's probably accurate, but I don't really know.
On the sewer or water?
Water.
Because, I mean, there's no, I think, that you're gonna say collapse?
We've had collapses.
Okay.
No, I was saying is we've addressed it as they've collapsed, but it's not like we have half of our systems all graded and the other half's ready to go ahead. I was pointing out that they have been addressed prior to VIP, since VIP, with constructions, things like that. So we're not at 50%, we're better.
Any other questions for me before I sit down and we get into department by department? Thank you all for your patience and your attention.
So what we'll do, has been kind of the custom, we'll, why don't you turn to tab 2? We'll start with public affairs and open it up for any questions, comments, recommendations.
Mr. Mayor, if you would, in case nobody else, but I suspect they will, would you explain your line item for public policy?
I mean, when we get to that, of
Are
course.
we there? Okay.
But we're under tab 2, so, I mean, everything, and that's under tab 2, everything is,
Okay.
open for discussion.
If I may, we have website maintenance and it's an increase. Are we doing something to address the fact that we don't have, or that runs on Flash? There's something to do with our website. We can't even get it on iPhones, iPads, things like that. Is that one of the things we're going to address with the increase?
I believe that with the, we're scheduled to do an upgrade to our website this year, and it's my understanding that with that upgrade, it's going to incorporate the new technology.
Okay, I just wanted to address that because I know I've got some complaints that, hey, it starts out with a video. No, it doesn't. Yeah, it does. And it depends on which media you're using to get to.
Right.
So, okay.
But just keep in mind, it's always going to be difficult. I mean, constantly keeping up to date with all the latest and greatest technology, because we're spending a lot of money. Not that we don't want to ultimately, but we certainly have to prioritize one of those.
I just saw that with the line item increase, I was hoping that was on the,
It's my understanding we're going to roll out a new website sometime this
It's
fiscal
probably
year.
into next year, early next year, but.
I just don't want to see it done and not done all the way.
Yeah. No,
I just
why
wanted,
do you-
if Tim makes that note or Sally, whoever,
Well,
just
we-
make sure that we get that addressed.
It's already noted.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most likely it's going to be in this fiscal year, but it may not happen until
January of next year.
January of
Maybe take time to get it. Just want to make sure it's done all the way.
We've been operating under the current website technology for
7 years ago.
at least 7 years. Might be a year or two more, but, you know, we were using the latest and greatest technology then, and when we do the new launch, we'll be using what's state of the art.
Page.
I think we just jumped over tab 1 here, because I know Tim covered a lot of this in his presentation. I don't know if
We
we're
can back up. You
If
can
we could
back up.
just-
Tab 1.
I have one quick question about the, what is this, R26 line, it's the red box revenue. And I guess my question is we have a minor tax that's placed on video rentals, and why are we not collecting that from Netflix or Comcast on demand, things of that nature? Those are still rentals, they're still video rentals, it should still fall under the auspices of, you know, that tax. And it's not something I think that we should, you know, necessarily go out there and pursue, but it's more of a question as to, if we're collecting it on Redbox, we lost a Blockbuster, why aren't we looking at other ways that people are renting videos? And shouldn't we be having a conversation with our legal team to see if we should be collecting tax on that because they are renting videos in the village?
It's a good question. I feel pretty confident nobody's gonna have the answer to
No,
that.
I know, I
today.
just wanted to bring
No,
it
no,
up
I
because
just
it's
made a
on-
note. We'll have to go back, I mean, certainly we'll find out. It may have to do with, you know, where the point of sale is actually taking place.
And I think that that's probably would have been the answer a year ago before they passed the Amazon law down in Springfield that basically said it's where you actually consume the product regardless of whether or not you have a brick or mortar presence there. It should be applicable to our ordinance when it comes to tax
We'll check it out. But
Absolutely.
also keep in mind, there's a recent, very current ruling on that
at
Amazon.
the circuit court.
Actually, I just saw that on the news, just to interject, that if the company is located within the state, you could charge a tax. But if they're not, if their main corporate headquarters are out of state, you cannot, and that was part of that with Amazon. But you could double check.
The other thing on that line item, it says all red box. I noticed the 7-Elevens aren't using red box, they have Blockbuster pay boxes. Is that just a generic red box term, or are we missing those?
We're missing those.
I know the 7-Eleven, it was on the TV this morning with a bunch of police tape around it. I saw it on Channel 9 this morning, but there was a Blockbuster machine behind them. So if it's all red box that's ready to check, we're missing one of the prepares. And I think both 7-Elevens have the Blockbuster. I've seen at least two
You know,
of them.
I mean, Redbox, the reason why they're paying us is because we,
It's the law.
contacted them.
Yeah.
I mean, they just started putting it, and we're like, hey, you gotta pay.
So we need to contact, because Blockbuster, when they had the brick and mortar, was paying us. Now that they've got the plug it into the front of a convenience store, they need to also.
We'll include all of them and we'll check into it.
And Jim, all of you guys look very professional in the background in the news.
Anything more under tab 1? If not, then we'll move on to tab 2.
Right, good. Under PA 8, Moving in the Grove, I know that there was some talk of doing something in conjunction with the chamber with their 100th anniversary, where they're having a casket race and possibly, you know, doing an additional concert in the fall to kind of correspond with what the chamber's doing. Instead of a Groovin' in the Grove, kind of a Coolin' in the Grove. And I was just wondering if we had enough money in that line item, if the chamber came to us and said, we want to do this as, you know, 100th year celebration.
And they'd be looking for October 27th. The committee has been talking, but yeah, we hadn't gotten to, meaning to get to you, haven't. It's a weekend-long affair. Friday night, there's going to be a costume ball at the park for the 100th anniversary of the chamber on October 26th. Saturday morning, they're talking about doing the casket races. Saturday afternoon, trick or treat on Madison. We're hoping to do something at the community center, to do a ghouling in the Grove, Thomas. I think you actually came up with that name, didn't you?
I don't know.
I'll give you the credit.
Thanks.
But if they do the Goulding in the Grove, isn't the chamber going to pay for that?
We're hoping that, because different agencies and different people are getting involved, like the Park District's helping greatly with the Friday night promotion. Obviously, the police will help with shutting down the street for the casket races. And then we'll have a proposal of what street and what time. The community center has done a great job. We're thinking of it being a community-wide, have one last season-ending affair at the Grove.
When is the Oktoberfest occur?
And it didn't happen last year, too.
Well, it's the church there, they're not with that.
If there were shared costs, things like that, what would something like that cost? Yeah,
For what, just a band?
like a band, I don't know what your expenses are to the community center for that.
Well, the line item here, I think on the Goulding in the Grove, yeah, but that's basically 3 events, right? I mean, so if you take the line item divided by 3 events, it's going to be a rough
So,
ballpark.
bump it by 2.
That's what we're here to talk about.
What line number is that?
PA 8,
Oh, I was looking at last year's numbers, so the projected is 8 for this year.
Are you just looking for music, or you want concession and you want everything? The whole?
Grooving in the Grove, we call it Cooling in the Grove.
Just, Mayor, that would fall under your other events. That would not fall under the community center. That would be under your budget for other events.
This is his budget.
Well,
Really, that is just the next slide.
we could do either. I mean, we're talking about making an addition, so and we could do it either.
Like 2,500.
Yeah, that'd be good.
We up that number by $2,000, make it even 10.
Yeah.
Why don't we look at PA9, so it doesn't get confused, you know, with a group in the Grove, and just put it under the other events.
I just want to make sure Karen's running, she does a great job.
Oh,
I don't want to let her off the hook on the actual.
If you look at PA9, the community center also runs the farmer's market, which is under PA9, so. That way, it would be less confusing, because our line item is grooving in the Grove for PA8, that it doesn't get misinterpreted, which has happened in the past, right?
Around here?
Sometimes things get misinterpreted, you know, like spending 10,000 for one band, stuff like that. We put that under other events, then I don't.
Or family, just family events, that's all under. Just family.
That's a community.
Who's to take?
But what, the bottom, I guess, really what do you think it would take to produce
Just the band and concession, probably about $2,000
about $2,000?
for a few hours, maybe less.
And we were good weather for that day too.
Yeah.
Already put that in. Talked
Can
about
I dress
our
up?
I expected.
I'll recommend that we take PA9 and just maybe round it off to 7,000.
Who's taking the notes on the ups and overs? Okay. I just want to know
We
what
all are.
Tish has got. Yeah, but somebody's got to enter it all in, so.
I'm doing the minutes, and I'll double check with, Trish and Judy that I have enough regard to.
Okay. But when I lean over and say something, I want to know if I'm looking to my right or my left. I know it's my left, I'm good.
PA9 is really.
From here.
From the shift, so we can share. Not easy.
Oh, you got like a rough draft there.
Liquor licenses, farmer's market, and some people. It's kind of.
Mayor? I think it's pretty special that the chamber is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. And I certainly think we should support it. You have a couple of other sheets where you have the chamber listed, but it's not clear how much support they're getting. On PA 13, you have support from the chamber in your general community relations budget.
Again, this isn't a support of the chamber. This is a weekend-wide activities throughout the community. You know, the chamber thinks it's a great idea and they're promoting different things going on through the weekend. The chamber would not be running this. This would be a multitude of events from a multitude of organizations. The chamber is suggesting it to the village. They are not looking to run it or have it offset through the chamber in any way. It would be a village event.
Any other recommendations?
Mayor, question.
Sure.
I know a group, they approached Tim, I think they were writing a formal request to revert 5K. That weekend was also mentioned, October 27th. I don't know, A, did you get that proposal from the uniforms and the rules?
I think so.
We started talking about that also back in January.
Is that the Golden Apple 5K?
No.
That was the one that was here last time. right?
Similar.
They have done it here several times. This is a new.
Well, Golden Apple, this is a new,
This is a totally different book.
A, was that included, B, did you get it, B, was that included in any way? I know it wanted to run us, it's a break-even proposition,
Commissioner, with the 5K runs, which we do have some experience with in Forest Park, you know, the only extraordinary cost associated in managing something like that is on the police side. So some costs associated with police, so it's not going to be a specific line item here. We would just incorporate that into the activities of the police department.
So you have received some kind of request? I know Chief Ryan stopped in West Chicago.
You know what happens, and, you know, so I haven't asked the police chief this specifically, like in his budget, make certain that we have enough covered in there, and it most likely would be overtime costs. Because it is impractical, if not impossible, to ascertain over the course of a 12-month period precisely how much you're going to expend in overtime costs. That's why our department heads put good guesstimates together. So I guess what I'm saying is, if in fact we do the 5K run, I feel very confident that the police department has done a good job at making a good guesstimate on their overtime costs to be able to handle costs associated with the 5K run. Yeah, I don't see that, you know, issue whatsoever.
Because any public works would be like putting up barriers and leaving them off to the side on the regular shift. So they wouldn't incur any,
I don't know,
extraordinary expense
when
there.
you run the department at the time we did
Yes.
the Apple 5Ks, because I think what they did was you guys set up the barricades on the side of the street like on Friday afternoon,
Police department, I want to say we're not,
and then it was put out. Yeah.
So that doesn't, you know, it's all police. I ran at 29.6. My one and only. You do 15 this year, is that what I just heard?
No, I said that was like a 15-minute mile.
All right, we want to move on to tab 3.
Could I confirm that we just had one change in tab 2?
That's all I have so far. Yeah, we can circle back around later. if we
Okay,
need to.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Were you going to talk about the public policy?
I can, Commissioner. I was waiting for somebody to ask. Under that should be PA 11, public information policy. My plan is to look to this fiscal year in a couple of new initiatives. I don't have any exacts as we sit here today. And of course, I have to be careful how I phrase the thing I'm going to say, because sometimes the newspaper takes it out of context. So I'm going to give them the opportunity to try and get it right. This is a budget. And as Tim already pointed out, a budget is not something that's absolutely cast in stone. And in all the years that I've been here in local government, we have seen that year after year after year. Just because we discuss a budget doesn't mean that we're automatically going to spend it. But my thoughts are, in this fiscal year, there's a couple of initiatives I'd like to pursue. Things pertaining to green initiatives, and also a Roosevelt Road Corridor task force. So look at redevelopment all along Roosevelt Road. So I don't have committees set up in this notion yet. I don't have a clear, concrete plan, but if the budget becomes successful, then I'm going to start working on coming up with some clear, concrete plans. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse. And so that's what, you know, those are just a couple of initiatives that would be included in this line item. In addition to actively producing a routine newsletter this fiscal year.
Mayor, are there specifics with the green initiative? Is there any ideas that move forward, or is it just very generic?
Okay, so let me back up. What I said was I don't have any specifics today.
Right, just general ideas.
Well, sure. There are no.
Something. We're
Pardon?
gonna be born from something, like, we should look into this, and then stuff can spur off of that, but I guess if there's something that
I think that we want to look at some initiatives, Commissioner, in terms of some of our trash and waste control. I think that we want to look at some initiatives in terms of expanding some of our electronic recycling, and because it has been very successful, and I think it needs to be taken to the next level. I think that we need to, as a community, start taking a leadership role in public awareness about green initiatives and certain changes that property owners can take in making their buildings, whether it be homeowners or business owners, green friendly, environmentally friendly, reducing electrical costs. And I think that part of our core mission as a community is to help educate everyone who has a home or business in Forest Park house. So that might be simply in the form of producing some information material and routinely distributing that to everyone within the village of Forest Park. That's, kind of my general thoughts, about this. And then, of course, along Roosevelt Road, that's been a bone of contention for a couple of years, economic development, and it's a hard task. And, I think that probably the best way for all of us to move forward is forming some type of group that can help start guiding the process. Because I think it's going to be a long-term process in terms of any redevelopment on Roosevelt Road. But we need to start somewhere. And I think that place to start is organizing a group of people and trying to give a clear sense of direction in terms of how we want to go about trying to either fill current vacancies or replanning the way that Roosevelt Road looks. And certainly, I think the Commissioner of Public Property is going to have to be part of that group.
Happy to do it.
Want to move on to tab 3? No, we are at Community Center. You're not on yet. You're getting anxious. You're coming up next.
You're in the warm seat, not the hot seat.
What was that major trip that Tim mentioned?
Yeah.
They're going to the rack. Each year we put in for a trip, because each year they do an away trip. If we fill it, great. If we don't, then they don't go. So we plan it, we put it out there, and if we have enough people to go, then we go. If we can't fill a bus, then we have to cancel it.
But that'll be offset by revenue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all paid for. That's why if we can't get enough people to fill the bus,
What's the line?
then.
Yeah, what is the rack? Oh, yeah.
Isn't that that restaurant? He's now an actor in
It's,
Wayne's.
it's a big rack.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Alcatraz.
I don't know.
It's the rock.
But this is one of those things, because it was on Tim's presentation,
Right.
and again,
They've gone to New York, they go Branson, Missouri, they go all over the place. But if we can fill the bus, then we can go.
Oh, they don't go on a plane?
Well, to New York, they went on a plane, but we had to
If you're
have.
going to Alcatraz, I suggest a plane.
Yeah, we can't. That'd be cool, I know.
this is one of those items, though, that without full explanation, right, all you see up there is $60,000 $60,000 expense side. And sometimes in the past, what has not been fully reported is that there's an offsetting revenue, which means it becomes essentially revenue neutral. That, in other words, the trip is fully going to pay for itself. We're not going to be taking excess revenues out of the general corporate fund to offset the trip. But we have to disclose it, because if the trip comes together, ultimately whatever company the community center hires to put it all together, we're going to be writing a village check to pay that company. But then we're getting revenue from all of the participants that go on the
We
trip.
put it together, and then they pay us. But if we don't have a maximum a minimum and a maximum, but if anything, then we have to cancel it.
And I think, are they doing, well, they do kind of an annual big trip, but also this year is a special year for the senior citizens.
Celebrate, well, no, it's their anniversary.
It's their anniversary year
Yeah.
The seniors club?
for the senior club. But it's, you know, I think the point is, it's a notable expense.
Well, it jumps at you because it's a 48% jump from last year.
Exactly. So, I mean, it requires, you know, proper explanations. 100% going to be offset by revenue from the participants that go on the trip.
Mayor, see, we have farmers market and community center line, that just promotions on the, why is there, you had mentioned before that came under line.
What line is it?
Is it just, CC 21? It was mentioned earlier that it was part of,
PA9.
yeah, is that just promotions for, or?
Well, this line item.
Oh.
Farmers market.
What is it being, yeah?
Yeah, but I think we have. Bear with me, Commissioner, let me get this all properly organized. Salmon.
I kind of answer some of it, maybe a little bit. Judy might have to reject from the farmers market began under your budget, it's always been under your budget. I don't know if Judy, maybe her chance.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
in
know.
for it.
And, okay,
That's why.
did you put a line item or did Judy? Because one of the two of you guys put a line item in your budget that I was unaware of.
Oh.
So, you know, I continued under your budget, Mayor, because we've always done it under there. However, we could take it out and move it to hers. It's fine with me, but somebody started in the budget line that I was unaware of. It's a duplicate.
Okay.
But you might want to double check the numbers, you know, so.
Let's do this. We think that we may have some duplication going on. It'd be best for us to fully look into it and then we'll circle back and make appropriate adjustments. Does that sound fair?
Sure.
And I'm gonna say that we're gonna take a look at PA9.
CC 21.
And
Yeah.
place.
21.
And CC 21. Okay. We want to move on to tab 4. Police Department.
Jim, you mentioned that you guys have no intention of purchasing vehicles. Is that just out of the general fund, or are you still going to get stuff out of seizure?
Well, the
Right, 2 or
seizure-
3 of these
the
things a
seizure
year.
account we have maintains the seizure vehicles.
Okay.
You know, unless we can show that we're doing something different out of the ordinary, we're not allowed to purchase a replacement vehicle out of seizure funds.
Even the stuff that we get from Tiano?
Correct.
Okay.
It's to enhance the department, not to replace.
Okay. So you think we can get through this year without purchasing any vehicles?
We're gonna have to.
Globally speaking, on the vehicle front, this is always an area where actually I have a differing opinion with the police chief, but I mean, that's how things work.
Well, I know we have a lot of them, I just don't know if we have a lot of good ones.
We actually, unfortunately, Jim wasn't able to attend with us last week. He was on vacation. Myself, the deputy chief, Sergeant Keating, and Tim Dillon attended a law enforcement symposium by invitation through the University of Illinois, which we attended last week. And one of the topics that came up, because the whole concept of the symposium was managing law enforcement in the, what's being called the new norm.
We don't have the money.
Well, the new norm is everybody's kind of being expected to do more with less. And in that, one of the areas that came up as part of the discussion was vehicles. Some communities take an approach on the change out of vehicles based on mileage, not based on year. It's absolutely based on mileage. They determine the life expectancy of a vehicle not by whether it's 1 year old, 5 years old, or 10 years old, how many miles are on the vehicle. That's their approach. And they don't make any exceptions. And part of the, I think the philosophy behind that is, let's take care of what we have. Generally speaking, it's a lot less expensive to do maintenance to vehicles. You can throw $1,000 or even $2,000 into a car, and maybe you're going to get another 12, 24 months of good service out of it. In contrast to spending $25,000. So from a cash basis, it simply makes more sense to maintain.
My only worry about is deferred purchase, and if the vehicles are fine right now, I just hate to see we don't buy anything in fiscal 13 and we're stuck for 5 in fiscal 14. We need to take a look, and we've done it like with the building department, long-term, pay them down over time. The police department seems to be more of a use, abuse, and dispose of, but we need to do it so it's not all in 1 year. And that's a worry.
It's part of the rationale with the communities that do it on mileage base, because the predictability is much greater. You can start forecasting better based upon average mileage over the course of a 12-month period. You can predict out, in the next 2 or 3 years, or whatever the time frame is, this car is going to hit that benchmark, and we need to replace it. Absent that, you're basing it just on feedback either from the troops or from our mechanic.
And this is a strange question, it just came into my head. Is there any methodology to the predictability of wrecking squad cars? Is it newer people who wreck them? Is it, because, and I'm not being smart ass, we have wrecked several over the 14 years I've been hanging out here. Is it newer, more enthusiastic, or is it veterans? Is there a point to saying, hey, that one's kind of a beat up one, you're new, that's yours? And
I'd like to think everybody's enthusiastic, and there's no rhyme or reason behind who specifically crashes police cars. It runs the gamut.
Okay, I was wondering if it tends to be the newer people. I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, I'm really not.
No, I know.
But it seems to be always the new ones that are wrapped around telephone poles.
Well, don't you think people want to drive the newer ones?
We have done that
More often.
research.
Vanessa was asking is, generally speaking, do the troops like to drive the newer vehicles? And the answer is yes,
So
of
they're
course.
going to be driven more often, and they're going to have more
It goes by
risk of being in an
seniority.
accident.
The newer officers drive the older cars.
Okay.
And we have done that analysis, where we've looked at the 3-year accident trend and 4-year accident trend. We've tried to look, and with a variety of methods, we've tried to put some rhyme or reason to it. And the fact is, there isn't. The cars are on the street 24 hours a day, in varying conditions and varying circumstances, and accidents happen.
wondering if there's correlation or some sort of scientific methodology.
This
I'd
happens in our
rather wreck the
practice.
old ones.
Me too.
But you, Chief, you feel relatively certain that at least for this fiscal year, we can get by with the squads that we have?
We're fine, our fleet's in pretty good shape at the moment.
It's my only one on this. And everything else is payroll training.
Want to move on to tab 5?
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Brian. Line PD 37, 269% of what was anticipated, and we're requesting quite low again. Is there a one-time thing this year to do that overtime? Put that up, what was the estimate? I see the request is still low this year, was it
You know, and let me just see which department it comes out of. Oh, detectives? Historically, our detectives, yeah, this is detectives. I mean, it's hard to predict that we're gonna have a shooting, or that we're gonna have a major incident where they work 4 or 5 days in a row, 24 hours a day. And detectives are very difficult to predict.
So through the years, that 5,000 is, I'm just saying, should be asking for more. But we're at 269% of what was asked for last year.
You know, it would always be nice, it would always be nice to have more, but if the money's not there, I'll have to manage with all we have.
Okay, and one other one was the parking overtime, PD 45. Is there an event that caused that to come in at 173% of the budget last year? That seems like something we should be able to.
That's right. You know, the problem that we have is, right now, is with the courts. I mean, they stay late for the courts to deal with the courts. It's our record section, the clerks and records. So they have to frequently, as I say, the amount of paperwork we're generating right now, because we do have a lot of young aggressive police officers, they make a lot of arrests, they write a lot of tickets. There's a lot more paperwork to process. So sometimes they do have to stay late to process the paperwork. On occasion, they come in on a weekend and do the paperwork, plus the court. So as I say, I mean, we just have to attempt to manage what we have with the amount of money we have.
Thank you.
Chris, if you looked at that, I think they got enthusiastic on low rated the prior year. It was 9,900 the prior year. I think it got axed inappropriately the prior year, and now it's being funded at the level it was used last year. You see the first column where it's 9988.
Yeah.
So they managed to cut it by 39, but expected it to get cut by 6. It just wasn't recent. So I think the proper reprojection.
I think the mayor was talking about just specifically for the police department and the fire department. At least with, not so much parking, but certainly with detectives, with firefighters. We had a policeman injured last year, and I think Mike was off for 5 months.
At least, yes.
Yeah,
Everybody's
5 to
safe.
6 months. Almost every one of his shifts needs to be backfilled with somebody else. So it's very difficult. I think Steve has a guy up with the shoulder or a knee, or both the shoulder and the knee. So when they get guys who go out, almost every one of their shifts has to be backfilled. And it's, as I said, pretty tough to predict a guy tearing or rupturing his Achilles heel or pulling out his shoulder. So that's a real floating number.
And to add to that, when a police officer or firefighter gets injured on duty, the village has to continue paying them their full salary, all their benefits and everything. Because of the Public Employee Disability Act, they cannot, none of their benefits can be reduced in any way for 12 months. So we have to cover them and their overtime, and then any disability benefit that comes from workers' comp comes to the village. but we don't get anything for their benefits, any of their vacation or sick time, none of that can be reduced while they're on workers' comp.
And backfilling costs you 1.5 times.
Right. So, I mean, we're paying out the full salary, we're getting back 2/3 of the salary, none of the benefits, and we have to cover with overtime.
They, Rupture Achilles, could they just do desk work? Or they-
Oh, he
Sure.
was on light duty part of the time,
Yes,
yeah.
but I still need people on the street. I have minimum staffing on the street.
There's no way to swap that out, or you be doing other people's desk work.
Can I put a secretary on the street to handle police work?
No, but I'm saying, if you all have to, I would assume, please correct me, but everyone has to do shift desk work
I don't have sworn police officers doing that.
at all, zero. So they come in, they don't process anything, they hand things off, that's done by someone that strictly does that line of work.
They do processing when they arrest people and do stuff inside, but they work the street. Every sworn officer we have, except for the administrative people such as myself, are assigned to work the street.
And, at least to the best of my knowledge, anytime anybody's been injured, as soon as they get clearance from their doctor, we take every effort to at least get them back in life, if at all possible.
We've actually been really well with finding work, either Steve's been using guys downstairs, the clerk's office has been using firemen, police department's been doing a lot of work, and it has offset some of our costs. I think it's probably why we can get away with not replacing the secretary downstairs.
And the good news is that there hasn't been that many injuries, but just a single injury, really puts a monkey wrench into the operation.
It takes the budget and there's one catastrophic weather incident, and we're out of budget.
We really can't.
Plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Are we all done with police? How about if we take a 10-minute break?
What the heck? I'll blow off 3 minutes.
On to tab 5, village clerk.
Looks great.
Probably the most significant things in there are the reductions that we actually have in workers' comp and general liability. And kind
Refinancing of the bonds.
of dovetailing back to our conversation that we just had about employees injured on the job. The workers' comp rate comes down because there's been less people injured on the job and less payouts, so. Sorry.
$27,300 savings due to the refinancing bonds.
All matters.
She left. I thought she was still sitting
No.
there. I was giving her a good point for the newspaper.
Hey, Mark, on VC 33 and VC 34, I'm assuming that's parking lot credit card fees. They're on 33 and then 34 is the credit card.
Yep.
I know you and I had casual conversations about credit card processing.
Well, you and the mayor were up having a smoke. I just had a conversation. We are looking into what we can do to reduce those.
Just because I know
Visiting the bank very shortly.
it's very competitive out there with rates and charges and whatnot right now. So maybe
It's funny, I went right to that line and just had a conversation, but yeah, just for the record for everybody, we will be reviewing all those costs in the coming year.
Parking problem is that each charge is $3 or $4, right? Or less.
So for a $3 parking,
Right, what I'm saying is that there's a lot of companies out there now that are waiving, because some of these older credit card processing companies charge you 30 cents plus, 2.9 or 2.4%. A lot of them are now dropping to 30 cents and just doing it on a percentage basis.
So the swipe fees are going away as debit cards are becoming the new cash. So that's,
Right.
yes.
And they even charge more for credit cards. They
And-
want credit cards.
you charge more for debit cards.
probably don't get paid by the debit card company.
But those are all in the queue.
And Mark, one other thing, and again, this is not something we can address today, but I think looking over the next fiscal year, about the C42 telephones.
Yeah.
I just think it'd be worth looking into seeing what other options exist for phone service. I know that with, Comcast, WOW Internet, Vonage, they're all offering very, very competitive business phone systems that are,
Who's our provider right now?
I mean, I think we've got, I just set up an office, I think we have 12 or 15 lines, and it's $500 a month. Which, when you're looking at that type of number, I know that we have to have certain things in place with faxes, 911 systems, et cetera, maybe worth looking into seeing what we can move away from the traditional phone system more to a VoIP system.
I think we just did that a couple of years ago, looked at moving to VoIP and all that.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, things have changed drastically.
We've got like, circuits, I don't know if you call it circuits, but like, when you do an outgoing call from Village Hall, it's on, there's like 10 people can make an outgoing call on the same line.
Well, that's
I don't know exactly how it works.
understood.
I know how to work the telephone though.
Right, there were 911.
But it's like channel 1,
For
channel
switching.
2, channel 3, like all these
We
calls.
currently,
can be at the
we
same
use
time.
T1 service, and I don't want to say with the absolute certainty today, but I don't know that Comcast, and even, what was the other company? Vonage. Yeah, I don't know if they provide the T1 type service. I'm familiar, with
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
We certainly can look into it. I think part of it is with the sheer volume of, with T1s, it's not individual lines coming in. Because the channels create all these
That's what I was talking about, the T1.
telephone numbers, but, I mean, certainly it can be explored.
Well, I just think it's worth looking into, especially with the amount of money we spent on it.
Yes.
Do many concern reliability issues with VoIP? I heard Chief Lincoln at Echo, but I have you got police and fire, I think you want reliability.
There, and the reality is, and I do have, in that aspect, I actually have some technical expertise in it. We definitely, and I certainly would voice strong objection to going to VoIP. With VoIP, the head-end equipment that goes in the location, being the office, there's always going to be some type of box that they put in there. And that system, the communication system, is reliant upon that box, and it's reliant upon having power there. If you lose power, you lose all communications. So our system's a little bit different. It's not, because it's a little more mission critical, especially not our general line usages, but definitely there's a substantial amount of cost that go into the equipment in the 911 center, which is mission critical. And you absolutely want to have systems that are going to be working all the time. But it's certainly worth a little bit of exploration just to rule out, that you can't buy service a little bit cheaper. Well, there are some companies offering competitive T1 rates. Some are a little bit less than AT&T. We have to evaluate it. We did, unfortunately, this is going back to about 2001 or 2. We went with a competitive phone company because they sold us on all the grandiose ideas. And we found ourselves out of telephone service for about 2 or 3 days because they couldn't live up, to their commitments that they had portrayed. AT&T definitely has been extremely reliable. But it's worth asking the question.
I think it's worth looking, maybe AT&T is, they've got newer, better, different, that could, we can save some.
Wow. Wow.
It's all the cloud. Oh, McLeod, yeah.
Exterminating company.
Now they are, they changed.
They exterminated a lot of phone
They
services.
went out,
I'll tell you
went
that.
out of business and started exterminating.
So we're going to move on then to tab 6, the fire department.
very straightforward. Do you have retirees coming out this year? Do you have a bunch of people retiring this year? No. Just saw business.
You've got a pretty young department now, right? Who would be next in line to retire?
Help them move it myself.
Okay, we're gonna move on to tab 7.
Last controversial.
The only question I had is on PH 5, Rory. And I know it's a very, very small line item relative to our total budget. The employee car allowance, and I know we have the next line item, which is the automobiles for that. Do we still need to, I guess my question is where are we spending money on employee car allowance?
We have 2 part-time inspectors that are paid mileage, right, Judy?
No, nobody
They'll get a
knows.
flood.
Oh, they got it, yeah.
Chuck, the electrical guy, and our plumbing guy.
Okay.
It's nominal.
No, it's my, yeah, it's very small.
Tab number 8.
Move on to street and public improvements.
I'm against all of them. You commented on my budget, I gotta go after yours now.
I have the other mark. Just one thing John and I had a conversation about, we have to go through, John, fire hydrants this year, repaint all the fire hydrants, obviously, our curb repaints in yellow, state yellow, where as needed, by the credibility wants to get repainted up. So there may be an opportunity here for us to look at bringing on an additional part-time seasonal to maybe $3 grand, how much work is actually put in place behind that. We have to redo fire hydrant.
That's over and above the seasonal already.
Yeah. I mean, John and I had a good conversation, I mean, it's gonna be, a decent amount of man hours to do that. It's not something we have to obviously make a decision on today, it's just something I wanna throw out there for consideration. I think that, Commissioner Harrison and Greg, they have a conversation about that, so something that come out of his department as well.
So you guys have between the two of you 35,000, 20 on yours and 15 on yours for the seasonal, is that right?
Yes.
What would you, on a placeholder number, need?
Well, that right there pays for 6 part-time guys from May 1st to September 1st.
Maybe for 6.
Yes.
I'd add as well into that, I have the conversation with John every year because, every year, the village, in its beautification process, adds more and more areas that need to be maintained in terms of gardening and mowing and weeding and stuff. And John's been discussing, another guy, and that's going to become inevitable. Besides all that, we now, as you know, we bought a camera and a rotting system that we do some, I wouldn't say extra work with that, but it's certainly some time-consuming work. If the group thought that we could afford it, another part-time seasonal guy would be valuable to help John's guys, maintain the village the way we want it maintained.
So your dream list is 3. So that's 18,000.
I think that would be a conversation with Jonathan, to justify, because I'd much rather have a part-time seasonal person out there instead of a guy.
Don't say union violation word right now.
Don't say what?
Don't finish that sentence.
The other thing is we have to get okay from the union, because in the union contract, they only allow 5. So every year I get the okay for the 6th. So anything about that, I still have to go ask them.
What's that?
That's why I said don't finish that sentence.
But they usually don't, we should get that, that should be no problem.
Is it a problem if it's not? I don't know. I mean, Jesus, you're almost 1-to-1 with the union members.
It's 3 months. I don't think so, but I'll find out. Before I ask for it, I'll find out if it's okay through them, and then I'll get some numbers together and get back to everybody.
Seems like it might be an effective use of people resources, you know, just some part-time summer help to do some of those.
Cost benefit basis is amazing. Can we get it done? And if so, do we want to park an extra 18,000, which is 1/3 up?
Well, let
I
us-
have no objection.
Yeah, let us look into the union side of it.
That's a possibility.
But, and what I'm saying is, as a placeholder, should we bump both their departments by 9,000 right now? As a placeholder. As we know, a budget doesn't mean you're going to spend it. A budget means it's part of your plan. I suggest bumping both of you guys by 9,000. If you guys end up using it and you can justify it, then it's there.
You know, as part of that analysis, can we also, just out of curiosity, contact a couple of landscaping companies? And because we have added significant amount of greenery with our bump outs and islands, and look at getting costs.
I have to be careful, I have to look at the contract to see what we put in the contract for what we're allowed to sub out. And landscaping might not, once we put that on the list.
No, I understand there's got to be an analysis done of that, but I just, so let's say that we did have the ability.
Right.
Just in terms of overall analysis, I still support the notion of effective use of some extra part-time help, because definitely for the curbs, fire hydrants, some of those trivial tasks. But in terms of plantings, the bushes and trimmings, we should get pricing from a couple of different landscapers, just as an idea to see what would it cost.
I think it'll end up being an exercise, and it's fine just to prove it, but for what we get out of Pat and his crew for making the beautification of this town.
But can he more effectively be used elsewhere?
I think once you see what it costs of McAdam, because I've had them bid on different stuff, and other landscaping companies, you do pretty well. Yeah.
I mean, we've got old contracts to this year. They were pretty expensive.
Do we have to use the top of the line landscaping company?
No, I'm just being, I mean, I
Well,
know-
you have to use prevailing wage companies.
Huh?
It's gotta be within the prevailing
We have to
wage.
use minimum wage people. You know, let me check the contract, that'll be the most important thing.
Yeah. If we subcontract to somebody, they're required to do prevailing wage.
No,
I don't wanna waste
understand.
too much time on the exercise,
No,
but
I
I think,
understand what you're saying.
I have a feeling you'll find out that what we get out of Pat is amazing compared to what the open market.
I don't disagree. All I do know is, you know, in my networking with other mayors, a number of communities have outsourced a portion of landscaping, particularly on public parkways, those that are most visible, because generally speaking, you know, landscapers, in addition to like cutting grass, for instance, they'll also use the edger, you know, to clean it up. It looks very manicured along the edges, and they're very efficient, you know, at what they do, because they do that every single day. So I'm just saying it's an analysis, and it may end up proving not making sense, but we should at least take a look at it.
I'm not against that, just guesstimating where that's going to go. But if we can get that in for the lower cost labor, the summer help, I think that'd be a great idea.
So are we ending with 9,000 in each department for part-time seasonal?
That was my proposal.
Chris, you're not up for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So increasing the streets and public improvements by 18 or 16.
Yeah, based on
An extra person is warranted. That's the first I've heard. Now I'd like to have a conversation, but we talked about that. I'm not going to personally put anyone on the line, but I think more would be done if we had the right people that are hired over the course of the summer as opposed to adding a new person. I can do more out of those positions with the right hires. I don't know where we're at, it's been versus, I'm sure some of those stuff. I don't see.
a lot of.
I mean, we can have a conversation about it, like I said, it's been discussed.
Right, and my issue is based off of, you know, how beat up, you know, curbs get now, the fact that we redid the fire hydrants this year. The curbs themselves, and that's a very public thing that people see, they're beat up, they're scraped, they paint these, cascade out between tires, snow plows, you know, lawn mowers, baby strollers, etc. And if we're gonna do it, I'd much rather have the resources to do it right, do it well, so that when it is done, it holds up a little bit better and lasts a little bit longer, looks a little bit nicer, because that is what people see when they drive through our community. You know, that coupled with, you know, I know I've had conversations with John when we've gone out and talked to the residents, you know, with vacant property, things like that, where our public works guys are now going out there and having to mow, you know, grass for people and because their homes are vacant or for, you know, any number of different reasons. Again, that goes to the beautification issue regarding our village. If we're going to be attractive place for people to come visit, you know, spend the money from general sales tax revenue, we have to spend a little bit to invest in things.
In your argument, you made my argument as well. Getting the right people to do the job, so it does great. It doesn't mean more people get the job, it's the right people to do the job.
There's a finite number of hours, workday hours a week.
I'm saying that we can maximize that.
Okay.
Can you guys make a point of getting together?
Yep, sure.
And talking about it, you know, we can reach some common ground.
Your Honor, for purposes of this meeting, shall I put a number in there? Remember, we don't have to spend it, that's not a rule. So can I put a number in there?
Well, I mean, we could do a placeholder for now, because we're gonna have to circle back after today, you know, once we make a couple of these adjustments.
So far,
Would you
there's
see
one
the next
adjustment,
time?
just so you know.
Wouldn't you see the next time we have this up would be at a regular council meeting, right?
Could be, sure.
I don't think we need a whole workshop, it's going pretty well.
Agree. So do we want to put a placeholder in?
Yes, I would prefer to have a placeholder. Just because we have the money budget doesn't mean we have to spend it.
And I'm fine if there's an objection from Commissioner of Public Properties, just put it all under streets of public improvements. So increase that number from 20,000 to 38.
Change from 20 to 38.
Chris, in a sense of fairness, because it's just a placeholder, how about, you know, agreeing to split it, half yours and half the other commissioners? When we come back, we could always.
Are we gonna come back? It sounds like we're not gonna come back now.
No, we'll have this back before us, most likely just at a council meeting, because I don't think we'll need a whole workshop, you know, to look at some of the adjustments.
I know there's only been one adjustment, we haven't got to me, and I have about a dozen, and I don't know if I want to go through this all today, because John and I have been working through some things, and I don't feel comfortable on some giving an exact number today, but I don't know, when would I present those, or just send them to Tim, or what's the best way? We're not gonna have another formal meeting.
If we felt necessary to come back as a formal meeting, outside of a council meeting, we could do that. I'm just saying that most likely it wouldn't take several hours like today is taking. We could probably get through it in a more expeditious manner.
Like a 6:45 special council meeting.
Something thereabouts, yeah.
Okay, well, maybe, I'm sure, I have, John and I have put a dozen changes in mine, I don't know if we want to do that today, because we're not finalizing some of the numbers yet.
Well, I think, you know, I'd like to at least explore all of those issues that, you know, just run through them quickly, what we had today, and certainly we can talk about it. So, you know, I still want to make sure that everybody understands if we put it in, we won't have to spend the tax money.
But before we move on to tab 9, in terms of considering this the additional part-time seasonal help. We were talking about 16,000.
I miscalculated, it was 6,000 per, seems to be what the number is for something. So 3 would be 18,000.
Okay, so.
So it's either 9 and 9 or 18.
So in terms of just a placeholder, could we add 9 in each department today?
Want to put a placeholder?
Yeah, just a placeholder. I mean, we're gonna make a record of it, and then we'll come, I guarantee we'll circle back around with this, and by that time, everybody will have had an opportunity to absorb it all. So if we do in streets and public improvements, we would add 9,000 to which line item?
SC 10?
SP 10. And jumping up to tab 9, where would we add the 9,000?
10.
PP 10. Now let's just go back to tab 8 for a moment. Are we all done there?
I just have one question on that. Our residential hauling, recycling, yard waste, and solid waste, are we out of contract right now? Is it a contract bidding year? Is it something we should look at?
We're good through 2013. So we're good this year, it's up next year.
And we'll be aggressively bidding that. Or Chris said, we'll be aggressively bidding that.
But we aggressively did it last time.
And it felt, yeah.
And nobody really aggressively did it.
Okay, so.
And one thing on the recycling cost, Mark, there are municipalities out there that actually surprisingly don't get a check back for recycling. And that's, I think, one of what the mayor brought up, you know, some of his money that he's got in his budget for his green initiative, green task force is becoming more aggressive about encouraging residents to recycle more. You know, all parks have some of the food waste over there to cut down on some of these expenses. So I would hope that moving forward, as, you know, we develop some of these green initiatives, we can encourage people to recycle, get rid of food waste.
Even if it got to a flat fee, that's $250,000.
Well, right. And like the Village of Roselle gets a check every year for recycling. They get a check, they get revenue of $30,000. So that's a, imagine flipping that.
So they don't pay
paying out.
for recycling and they get money back?
But I think it's part of our contract, right? I mean, that's part of, isn't that built into our contract with the Abide right now, with the Allied? So, because I think that we were talking about that initially, they make money on that, right? So that's why they want that component as part of their agreement. But if we were to separate that out eventually, you know, when you do negotiate, there's a money generator there. It's definitely a revenue generator.
Right, they're making money on recycling the goods, and they're also making money from us taking the goods.
Right.
And it's a win-win for them, which is something that moving forward, we should not be doing. With the cost of recycled paper, recycled glass right now, it's just grabbing all alone is, I think, $325 a ton.
Now we're gonna move on to tab 9.
I'm gonna go get a pop.
Like a general trust, which, as I stated earlier, John and I might go back and forth on some changes that I would say are super significant, but are definitely gonna bring it below an increase at all, and it'll be in the negative. Done with it for a very low number, but definitely below the 1.9 increase that it's currently at. And I wanted to ask a question to Tim, it's something, that gasoline jumped up, and I noticed that months ago, and at that time talked to Tim about it, and he and Tish were working on a report outside of just the cost of gas usage, and I think that's still ongoing, we're out of rapid, but that has been, was addressed when we saw it kind of creeping up, and Tish and Tim are working on that to analyze if we could cut consumption somewhere first. And second, we brought this up last year, for the first time probably in forever, Moore just didn't have an exclusive bid and contract for gas. John went up, got another bid that found Moore to be competitive enough to stay with Moore. But what we did explore, and I'd like to explore again this year, is getting a fixed cost for gas push some, I don't know, more
Chris,
dozen.
that's a problem. I told you, you cannot get fixed.
You can, but the
Price of
company
fuel
does.
changes every day.
But you can lock in. The company, they would give us a fixed rate.
Who
It'd
would?
probably be higher.
Palatine Oil. Well, it's a little bit of a gambling. You go,
Right.
you know, but it's a citizen. We would have, if we were locked in last year, we wouldn't have had increases at that rate. I think I still have the paperwork, but if we would have been locked in at like 368, was it more than it was at the time? Sure, but we would have been paying.
I don't think we're at 368 now. I would say
Right,
it was
we're
always
below-
more.
we're below that, so if you think it's not gonna go down, you would wanna lock it in.
It's a, once again, it's a common practice, and it's, I think it's worth exploring as well.
How common? I mean, how many towns altogether have you checked that have locked in a fuel price for you altogether?
Well, I'd love to get an actual
Well,
number.
you said it's common.
Well, it's common with the fuel companies that they offer two different ways. We've only dealt with more until last year, even getting a quote.
Is that based on your vast knowledge of what we've done the last 10 years in town here?
I was told last year that it was just more, and that's the way it was. I understand that.
No, well,
Pillars
what
of
you
the
just said is that we've never checked pricing before.
That's what I was told last year.
No, that's not true. Because I've checked it almost every year I've been here, and I've been here
It wasn't checked last year.
Pardon?
It wasn't checked last
Yes, it
year.
was.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't checked until I asked for it to be checked, and John went and got other numbers.
Okay, so it was checked last year when you checked, right?
Right. For that, I was told, I believe by the mayor, said that we didn't check on it, and he said, go ahead and check it.
If your question is, do you want me to look into a fixed fuel price, I can absolutely do that.
Okay.
I talked to Mike Moore about that earlier, and he said that we don't use enough fuel to get a fixed price. That was what he told me from Moore. That it usually is, there's a certain amount that has to be met before you get a fixed price. Other than just
Still off.
Moore, I think it was Born Oil or Palatine, I forget who we dealt with last year. I don't know what their fixed price was,
I
but
got a third price is on the last one, I don't remember what it was, but I can look into a fixed cost. All I know is this year, we would have been in the hole with the fixed cost, because we're still under 360 again.
I wasn't given the confidence. I have to look at the paperwork, I still have it. That aside, so again, Tish and Tim are analyzing where the consumption comes from, if we can, makes it, that's a huge, huge number.
Well, yeah, we have a lot of vehicles.
Right. But I think it was worth analyzing, and thank you to Tish for looking into it.
I think with, with our fuel management system, we should be able to extrapolate usage, gallon usage by department.
Yeah, I've been working on it by month, for the past few years, and analyze, increase by month. There is an option, if the vehicles were entered initially as through a department, although, I can work through a list to determine department uses also.
Is it
Break
pretty
down.
easy, with the
It's-
software?
It's, it's
Not
usable.
so-so.
It's usable.
Is there any data entry stuff that we need to do to the software to produce better management?
Anytime we make
reports?
any kind of change to a vehicle, I have to reprogram a key. So, if I was to add specific department information to a vehicle that didn't already exist, I'd have to reprogram that, make that change. The vehicle would then require reprogramming the key for the vehicle.
So you need
So I would
to
need-
reprogram it?
I would need, if I made any change, I would need to reprogram the key.
So you need the actual physical key to do that?
Yeah.
So does each car, like every squad car that has a key, have a fob to it? Don't we have a universal key for all of our squads? We used to, didn't we?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not the fob for the gas, but one Ford key will work
Oh,
on
to
any of
turn
our.
the car on.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, to turn the car on, but every car, every vehicle in the village, every vehicle has a separate fob for the gas pump.
So if you're signed,
It's a different ID number, Mark.
but if you're assigned squad number 231, you actually take 231's keys, or you just take a master set that happens to be at
To
450?
the 231's keys,
Okay.
and then you
Then
put
it should
in
be,
like
yeah.
your employee ID number with it.
We're-
So that's kind of a.
One of the things we're looking at, Your Honor, we started with the broadest part, and we're trying to analyze, like if this, in calendar year 2011, we used more than 2010. Or we're trying to see, maybe we just got an extra delivery.
You're analyzing the usage.
So we're analyzing the big number, that's taking us down, and then we're analyzing the smaller number, and really going almost car by car and seeing how we get. Obviously, that's a lot more difficult.
It's my understanding we should be capturing two significant pieces of information. One is who the person is that actually is operating the pump, because that fob is assigned to, well, no, it's
The
not
fob's
the
assigned
vehicle.
to a
It's-
vehicle.
It's assigned to the vehicle,
Right.
but then
But then
they got
there's a user.
the user, because they have to enter their user number. So we're capturing who it is operating the pump, and then what vehicle the gasoline is going into.
Which is his employee ID.
Okay. You know, on a cursory look, two identical vehicles, two pretty much identical jobs, might be worth taking a look at. Two guys down here in public health and safety. Just compare them side by side on usage. If we're looking at who uses, how to use, those, if they don't come up almost identical, then that's something to look at. I assume our number
I
one
think
gas
the
users
exercise
is
is worth it, you know, it's $250,000 expense. And, you know, at the end of the day, it may end up coming to the conclusion that it is what it is. But that's why we got the software that we have, you know, to be able to produce some management reports and just to kind of have a handle on what's going on. It's like payroll, right? You look at those numbers and you go, gee, but pretty hard to knock it down substantially. Anything else on public property?
Was there a question before I got into going through the about dozen changes that we had? Again, I'm not, John and I haven't concluded some of what these numbers, so. I don't know.
Do you want to do them now, or do you want to work with John and?
So we've gone back and forth and agreed on a few, but then I don't have the notes to exactly where we're at on some of the other ones. We kind of were finding happy mediums on some things, so I don't know if it's better to talk to you today or.
Well, it seems as though we should probably do it with BMS. Come back to it. I think you had about 10 items that you wanted to change, and John agreed with
Most of
4 of them.
4.
Well, I don't know.
It was the numbers on
I'm
the.
just trying to remember exactly, but,
It was about a dozen, and I think you.
You know, Tim, I need to,
Yeah,
I've
with
done
all-
this on commissioner level. No, there's 5 of us in the room right now. Put it on the table, let's talk about it. If it needs to come back, but it's not the budget workshop and the other budget workshop. It's on the table, let's get it talked about. I don't want to have to hear this presented for the first time at a village council meeting. We all put ours out here. Let's see what you have to say.
I thought you were gonna have the other one. That's why.
No, it is, and especially here, do you and John definitely have agreement on some of the items?
We do on a couple of others.
I mean, because if you do, then let's at least make those adjustments now.
And I think we should hear, I talked about adjustments in my own department, Tom talked about some in his. This is the forum for that. It's not the, oh, I didn't get around to it, let's do it later. Let's get it out.
Once you know, Mark, we haven't had this information for a ton of time, so go back and forth.
Yeah, but what's new in this year versus last year in particular? What jumped off the page to you from last year's budget to this year's budget? You said, hey, I've got to change these dozen things. We all come in with a basic budget. We saw it up on the board, 72% of what we're talking about is fixed wages. Now, and then when you start looking at the other part was the water department, we take that out, we're down to about 12% of a budget that's actually salt, telephones, uniforms, tools and supplies. There's a very limited amount for changing. So, not to come on at you, but you've had a general idea of this since you got elected. We've been looking at these numbers. So what were the dozen changes that were so shocking and new? That
I wouldn't call them shocking. Like I said,
that's
but
what I'm saying, let's do it today.
Okay.
in a general term, and the numbers aren't agreed on, it's something that I've been aggressively pursuing, is trying to trim overtime in general. Nothing drastic. We had no major snowstorms, so the numbers looked okay this year. But I think on a more general term, the numbers are still high, and we're trimming that gouging. Those numbers aren't agreed between John and I just yet. But we were going and to John's credit, he says we're going to keep a better eye on it in general, but that's why we don't have an exact number on all three lines for OT, which are P11, PP11, PP34, and PP47.
I recall, Chris, from your, look at P34, I guess the overtime, that was the big one.
Without the majors.
We put it in at, last year it ended up at 16. This year it looks like we'll spend 12. We put it in for the exact same as what we think we'll spend this year. And Chris said, as we've been saying all morning, I can put that number in at 2,000. That's what the group wants to do. But last year we watched carefully George's overtime. John watched it and I watched it. Almost any time it was going to be more than an hour, John asked me about it. And if it made sense, I would told him to do it. The reality is that George maintains more than 100 pieces of equipment. No question about that. And sometimes it costs money to have them work overtime. I think we've trimmed it considerably since last year. And again, we can put in whatever number you want. But if I need to work overtime,
I don't want the number to be a fantasy number. I want it to be realistic.
Well, to me, if we spent 12 last year and we think we'll spend 12 this year, that's pretty good analysis. I'm looking at 34. If we think we will have spent 12 last year, that's exactly what we put in this year. If you want me to cut it to 9, we could do that. But if I need them, I'm going to have to call them and it's going to go over 9.
Okay, there's certain things that he's needed for. We're talking about ways to trim that from the front end. I had a conversation with a local shop and a lot of volume that we use. I said, what if, and again, the union contracts are very situation, but what if, George does oil changes. We shouldn't have a guy doing oil changes. They said they could do it for $20 a car and do a complete check and give George a report saying this is what's wrong. Cop cars get the oil changes every Thursday, John. Have them go to Consolidated. They do a full oil check and give them a report to George and says, we need to work on this. They said they would do that for $20 a car if we had a volume contract.
All great ideas. Absolutely go to Jiffy Lube or Dan Bird or any of them and ask them if we could do it, what would it cost? I guess my point is, if they put in an overtime, the exact amount that we spent last year in overtime, and we don't spend it, what's the harm? And if we put in more, we put in 12, and we actually spent 13, I don't see, you're trying to make up a fictitious number, I'm trying to make up a number that makes some sense.
I look at the number, so John looks at it and goes, that's what I'm looking at. He gets a report and says it's November and I'm at 60% of George's overtime. I gotta, what I'm approving, I have to make sure I'm approving at this point. We have snowstorms that are coming up in December.
And I don't,
January.
what I would argue with you is that I don't think that's how we do it every day. We don't do it looking at the overtime number and saying I'm 60% of it. We say he really needs to be here today. It's in the budget, I'm gonna go for it. I gotta use it. And by the way, if I was at 9,000 or 12,000 as we think we'll spend this year, and something came up, whether I'm at 12,000 or I'm gonna go over, I'm gonna have to approve that overtime. I mean, I think, you think that we work hard to spend all 12,000 just because it's in the budget, and that's, I mean, I've proven for 3 or 4 years in a row that these department heads, they don't look at the budget, they look to cut every time and every place they can. And I don't see the harm. It's not overly inflated.
I don't think we're gonna hit 12,000 this year, being at the end of March, we were at 9,000, let's see that huge, you know, month. March was pretty low.
Just a number, into the last payroll, because we don't know what it is. And by the way, you see it in March, we've been working on it since January, and, you could very well be right. Maybe we won't spend 12.
So I'm saying if we're at 9,000 this year, we trim a little bit and count for snowstorms, 9,000 would be a doable number. Have John have that as his guide instead of.
If you're telling me you want it at 9,000, I can make it 9,000.
Okay, I'm just saying, as the guide for John, and of course, we could get hit with the worst, the winter ever next year, and that blows everything up, that's
So
understandable.
why are we arguing about $3,000? That's my point.
3,000 here, 3,000 there, 3,000 there, all of a sudden you're talking about 50,000, 100,000.
In a budget, not an expense.
Yeah, we're talking
You
about.
use as a guide, yes, absolutely.
But you're also talking about a year when we just said we're not replacing any squad cars, so there's gonna be an increase in maintenance on that, which is a mechanic. We had the most mild winter I can recall in my entire life. So there's less welds in the middle of a snowstorm to put blades back on. There's less transmission issues on the trucks that we have, some of them held together with grade tape and haywire as it is. Going into another season that, I hate to be the pessimist, but if we got off this lucky on one winter, we're gonna get nailed on the next.
Okay, and as you well know, George doesn't do everything, we outsource a lot already. Outsourcing cheap stuff, to me, makes enough sense.
And I get that.
Okay.
Okay, we can look
And
at
frees them up to do real work as opposed to an oil change.
The commissioner absolutely has the right to say, just as all the other commissioners, if your department, if he wants to make the OT 9,000, that's his prerogative. Unless it was completely unreasonable, meaning if he said, I want to just make it 0, I guess we could have an argument. Hey, if he wants to make it 9, and it ends up being 15, but that happens elsewhere. We're arguing over nothing.
I agree.
And so, I don't really have an argument with it. My argument, I guess, is with your thought process, but the mayor's correct. We can make it whatever you'd like.
No, you can't, you propose. The village council as a whole approves the budget. So that is false in that statement that you can make anything you want. Because right now, I'd like to make my budget 0, and I'm gonna blame you for all the overs at the end of the year when my department's over, so I look better on paper. So, no, the council has to come together with what is a logical roadmap for the entire village.
Well, I think the mayor said reasonable.
I think my point is, if the commissioner wants to reduce this from 12 to 9,
And
nobody should object to that. Make it 9. It's only a couple $1,000.
again, it's a guide, and what John looks at, and one of the things he's keeping an eye, as were you this year with George, was that number. To me, the guide I gave John was I wanted it at 50%, and by golly, we're at 50.6% again. But that as a guide, I thought it was a good tool. Yes, we do.
Judy's got her hand up.
I've looked at the fleet overtime budget for the last 5 or 6 years, and since 2008, no, not that far back, but anyway, the lowest it has been is 13,000. Now, there's been wage increases every year too, since then, about 13%. And it's gone up, I think last year was maybe the highest, for 16,000. So definitely 9,000 is way out of line. 12,000 is even very optimistic.
That's a pessimist.
But it wouldn't be the first time that an individual line item ended up going over in anybody's department.
But do you plan to say, okay, we're just gonna go under, and when it's over, it's over? Don't we try to be logical? Your statement right there, Mayor, is we're adhering to going under for the sake of going under with the knowledge we're going to go over. And I don't like budgeting with the fantasy on one department versus everybody else's. Cut mine by 10% across the board, and we'll just blame him for me being over. Seriously, let's set these guys up with realistic abilities. If he doesn't spend the whole 12, John did great. If we end up having a bad winter, we can make the number 9 and, we went 3,000 over. Really? Shocking. for the last 5 years, the lowest we've ever been is 13, but we're gonna go to 9 because we had an arbitrary pull it out of the air number to make it feel
It's not
good.
pull out of there, never, and I.
Well, then what year did you get it at 9,000?
Because I'm offering solutions for change, and you're just in the arbitrary number. It's not. I said it. We
It's not a
do something-
solution to change, it's a solution to fantasy budgeting.
It's not fantasy. I just offered a solution to say we outsource oil changes. The guy does oil changes at a rate we're paying him that he shouldn't be doing it. If we outsource oil changes and he has time freed up to do actual maintenance work, and he doesn't have to stay extra in the fall to get ready for the winter because he's got to spend his Thursday doing oil changes or what have you, I think there's validity in that statement. So don't say it's the fantasy one.
Well, the only thing I'd suggest is that that analysis has not been done yet, that we could get oil changes cheaper than George could do. We haven't done that. We think that's possible, but we haven't really done that analysis yet.
Who's transporting them?
That's a thought process. It's an idea.
Who's taking those vehicles over to Consolidated? Is that a police officer at $42 an hour?
Well, PD brings it on us anyway, so.
Yeah, but most of the time, PEO shuffles, like squad cars around anyways.
But I'm just saying, once you outsource, now you're taking it away from the village, there's different things. It's not as simple as you pull your personal vehicle into Jiffy Lube, you give them $29.95 to pull up. There's more logistics here. So if we're gonna analyze it all the way down, what's it cost that PEO to move the cars around? Whatever it is, there's costs. It's not just as simple. And if we take that out of here, we now need the line item for oil changes. How many oil changes did we have on the squad cars last year? Was it $420? You know, what number is this that we're working with that's coming off this horribly, unbelievably high overtime?
You could mock it by taking one item, but just start looking at every item, and maybe you go through your budget, or maybe I'll go through it for you and find some places to cut as well.
Knock yourself out.
I would.
Get 2 more votes.
I think that we have some hot pizza that got delivered. You wanna grab some pizza? Well, we can either like just take a break and eat, or we can get some pizza and come back and work while we're eating. It's up to you.
Or I could just not speak with it. I don't have.
No,
I
I'm not. This is an opportunity for us to talk about these things, and we need to get them out there a little bit. And, well, let's grab some pizza.
Mayor, are you gonna take a break?
I think the commissioner wanted to offer up some changes.
Sure, the ones that John and I agreed to, Dr. Tim said just rattle through these, and listen to Mark's objectives. On all the maintenance for buildings, lines P 22, 23, 26, there was liberal estimates after we got a conversation about those, so line 22, we're bringing a couple grand off most of those. $2,000 off police department
Wait,
maintenance.
line P 22, take 2,000 off?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
And outside of 23, I know that there's gonna, a cleanup there near the dumpster, unless there's something planned that no one knows about, we're bringing that down to 1,000, so 2,000 off of that. And then the public works building, you're knocking 5,000 off of that. There's a balance of some door replacements that are gonna be done. If needed, with a liberal estimate. And to tree replacement, we're gonna do one planting, that gets cut in half.
What item?
I'm sorry, PP 51. That gets cut in half to 3,500.
We only did one this last year.
We always do 2 a year. This year, we only have 5 requests for the spring, so we're just gonna roll that into the fall, just have one planning.
What I'm seeing this last year was only 35 or 50.
Yeah, I was explaining to Chris, somehow the spring planning started getting charged the year before. So instead of having the two during the spring and the fall, for some reason, somewhere along the line, the spring one got added to the year before. So we're only seeing one reflected every time.
So
Every
we're
plant is
minus
about
this
35
by how much?
35.
Oh, what's one tree?
That's what I order. I mean, they run.
3,500, we get how many trees?
We usually do 20 trees plus delivery for that.
No check for something. Back in house.
And then, PP 56, playground maintenance, taking 7,000 off of that, bringing it down to 30,000. That's
Were there
doable.
deferred installations this last year? Because I see it was 37.5 and only 10,000 projected use this year.
John can explain more. There was talk of doing, we're going to try and do this year, but John will explain.
Their big concern is replacing these railroad timbers on the outside that are rotting away with the new plastic. We were going to do it, we just didn't get it done. So we're trying to do a park at a time, where the wooden timbers, replace them with plastic timbers.
So is this a continuing annual replacement, or do you think we do all the parks at a park at a time?
I don't know until I get this number, I don't, these landscapers are giving me a hard time getting numbers back to me, so.
So we're gonna reduce 56 by how much?
7,000.
Leave it at 30.
Yeah. That's still fairly liberal. And then PP 59, reduced by 1,535.
What's different in that from this last year?
Why was it at?
It was at 4 last year.
Originally, we were gonna do a temporary dog park at the Alpine last year, that was the talk. So we had extra money there for fencing over there at Alpine. I think that has died, so. Until we had plans to put in, to redo this dog park, to maintain it $3,500 a month.
And that's it for now.
So those are the ones you agreed on, Chris, or are those all of them?
Those are the ones we agreed on. We got a couple things we were going back and forth on. It's pretty much some of the overtime numbers, which fine, we can forward that to you. But it's pretty much a continuation of the conversation we had earlier. It's not going to be major in any way. It's more of a, and again, it's a guideline. And John is very good about some change in the mentality, a little bit of thought process about overtime requests. I'd say building on already good program, at least put in place as best.
Your Honor, if it works for you in that segment, John and Commissioner and I will make those adjustments that we need to make on those few items, and then make sure all of you get the full package again via email with any of the changes.
Would you highlight any changes that are discussed beyond this room?
Yep.
But I'm sure you're gonna send something that this is what the whole room discussed and changed, but if there's something that's discussed and changed outside of this room, that should be highlighted.
Yes,
differently.
yes.
I will move on to tab 10.
So 11, 34, and 47 are pending? The overtime lines?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yes.
There's no good ones, correct?
Well, there's two. There's some more.
Well, 10 is vehicles.
Oh. There's the product.
So how many vehicles do we have here for replacement this year?
In the fire department budget, Your Honor, that particular vehicle is starting to eat up an exorbitant amount of maintenance.
And it smokes.
It's old enough.
Yeah.
So I think for the last probably 4 or 5 years, that truck has been in the budget.
I definitely, I have no problems with the fire department trucks, I don't think it gets a lot of abuse. I just have a fundamental issue that I want to talk about in the fire department vehicle. And a couple of things. One, when I think about replacement of some vehicles, I'm drawn back to the community center. I know we have the new bus, but we also have 2 cars that are 11 or 12 years old, I think, that are used pretty much every day transporting children and senior citizens around. And we've been holding on to those cars, holding on to those cars, holding on to those cars. And when I think about this, and with respect to the deputy chief basically is going to have a car to drive from the fire department to Brookfield. Do we have our priorities in place? That's my question.
I have no dog in the hunt, so.
I'm throwing it out there for conversation.
What's he currently driving here?
I forget what year his is, but
A
it's.
2000 Ford Explorer, I think. And in addition to that, one of the other questions that I have, do we need all SUVs? So let's say that we agreed to replace the fire chief's car.
Well, it says Ford Interceptor.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I think that's the cop version of the Taurus, isn't it?
I don't know.
I don't think that's Ford.
What did we pay for these vehicles that just
The
bought?
little escapes were like 20 grand, 19 and change, so.
20,007 less than Houseovers. 20,723. So whatever this car is 4 grand higher. And it says purchase with insurance proceeds for DC. What's that?
That's the truck that we got last year.
Oh, that's the line item above it. Okay.
That's not, we got that one.
Oh, it looks like that's one wraparound sensor.
Yes.
Okay.
Should be tab 10.
Yeah.
First, should be the very first.
What happened to the fire chief's car? It just happened.
I haven't gotten there yet.
I didn't get it. I didn't get it. That would be right.
So, at least for me, I don't want to be unsupportive of it, but here's what I do know. In the fire department, we've got, the fire chief got a new car, and so his car, which is unmarked, by the way, and it shouldn't be his old one, it's sitting behind the firehouse. It's unpainted. It's an unmarked vehicle. I don't think any fire department vehicle should be unmarked, with the exception of maybe the chief, maybe the deputy chief. But so we have that Ford Explorer or Expedition. That's sitting back there. I don't know what state that's in, but it's sitting back there. We have a Ford Explorer sitting back there. We have that F-250, that's sitting back there. So like those are 3 utility vehicles. Now on any given day, I think how many firefighters we have on duty? 5? If we get a fire call, most of them are on fire trucks. How many utility vehicles do we need sitting around?
And that F-250, that's the pickup truck that is marked, right?
Yes.
And then we've got the Explorer, and then we've got the Deputy Chief Explorer. So there's actually 2 Explorers, correct?
There is.
So we've got a Tahoe, 2 Explorers, an Expedition, and a pickup truck for the people who don't climb into the shiny trucks and drive the fires. But
And that's only 2 people. We don't,
that's kind of the point I was
yeah.
getting. So are we looking to trade in 2 Ford Explorers on the new Deputy Chief car?
I'm raising the issue because I think, if I don't say anything, what I think we're going to end up with is this additional collection of cars sitting around here doing nothing.
So if we can liquidate 2 of the Explorers,
That would be a little more palatable, I think.
what?
Were they get used at all? They just sit there, they just shuffle them, or?
I think frankly what happened, the F-250 is a good utility truck that I think they might use on some instances where there are fires and they need to bring equipment, some hand saws and stuff stuff like that.
It also has utility towing for like when we have the, like firehouse that goes to the schools, when they've got the light tower, when they've got a phone machine. It can move equipment that's trailer. If we needed a boat that we borrow from North Riverside to drag a body out of this nice river, we need something that tows. So that is a useful vehicle. They can also get in that truck and drive up to the hardware store and get parts. They can go do inspections. It's a useful vehicle in a number of things.
Absolutely.
So, and do we still have a Crown Vic back there?
No.
Take that trash when the tree fell.
Yes.
Oh, that did clean up some of our vehicles. Got it. So, what's the useful life of the Expedition?
I have no idea. I don't even know what mileage is on it.
Anybody?
I'm sorry.
Steve's old car?
Do you know what the useful life left on the Expedition is?
The chief's car.
Former.
The old car, yeah. My understanding is that was a wreck, why he got rid of it, because it would start needing a lot of maintenance as well.
Well, we still have. So my point is, if we get a deputy chief car, should we dump 2 Explorers and Expedition for that purpose?
Well, let's put it this way, the chief would have some explaining to do why we weren't getting rid of the budget. So, you know,
Yeah, or is, more often than not, chiefs do an excellent job of trying to convince the administrator why they need that, but they really don't need that.
Can we call it down?
I'd be willing to listen to an explanation, but other than that, if we get 1 and lose 3, that's insurance, that's license plates, it's liability, it's things for trees to land on, it's parking spaces. We can clean up 3, and the 1 spends most of the time in Brookfield because it's off-duty 16 hours, 5 days a week, and 24 on 2 of them.
No, I think he works Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
You think he's only here at 40 hours a week, so.
Yeah, well, because then my next point is, wouldn't like a Chevy Impala, I don't know what those things cost, wouldn't that suffice?
I don't think you'd get it much cheaper than the 24
No.
in an Impala versus this. And at that point, you're arguing just a couple bucks. But if we could clean up 3 vehicles, 3 parking spaces, 3 insurance payments, 3 license plates.
Mayor, pardon my ignorance here, is there a good reason why we're giving the deputy chief a vehicle to go to and from his house?
And we don't have either of the chiefs here, so I'll just temporarily make some comments. I mean, the only argument that you get from either of the chief is it's an accommodation, because both deputy chiefs do vehicles. And the only argument, legitimate argument that they can come up with is that if in the event there's an emergency, they get called back to town.
So I mean, they have special equipment in there, ready to go, so we're gonna have to stop at so it's just a vehicle that they use to transport themselves.
But it would be decked with lights and sirens so they can come back in an emergency capacity. And I'm sure they do have some equipment in there. They probably have their junk gear in it.
Well, yeah, man, that can fit in the trunk. That's the whole purpose of.
No, I'm just arguing in favor of giving them a car versus no car, not what car.
Well, and then, wouldn't we be able to, if it's a siren light issue that they had to get there expeditiously, I mean, we have a call list of people that we call, there's a hierarchy, chain of command of, if there's an emergency, it's, chief, then 2 deputy chiefs, and get here ASAP, barring the fact that if, the chief is out of town, I mean, he's 2 miles away, we're forced. I just, spending $25,000 plus expenses to supply a vehicle to someone to get to and from their home just strikes me as being a little excessive, and potentially better use of village dollars would be to take something, either a vehicle that is almost out of service or soon to be out of service, and say that's your option if you want to use it. I just can't see in this day and age why we're just supplying someone a vehicle that on our dime to get to and from their home.
We used to forget the gas price.
I'm just having a hard time when, John's beating the crap out of a Durango, as you point out, the community center's got a vehicle, 2 vehicles that are,
Those are 2,000.
yeah, 12-year-old vehicles, why we're giving some perks. And I guess, based off this conversation, is I'm new, I haven't really gotten the the full gamut of how many vehicles we actually have and what their statuses are. And that probably would be something that would be beneficial to say, here's how many total vehicles we have, here's their condition. So it seems like we could plug some needs with vehicles we already have without having to come out of pocket to purchase brand new vehicles just because they want newest, latest, greatest.
I raised the point because I think I'm more in line with your thinking, but I was hoping to at least raise some conversation about it.
Yeah, I mean, my preference, and without a good justification, you can make the argument to give every department head a vehicle using their argument. If there's an emergency and they need to get here, they need to have, flashers and lights on it.
Well, Karen doesn't get a car to take home.
I understand.
John does not take the village car home.
I do.
Oh, you do take it home now? Okay, but for a while, you were not taking a vehicle home.
I mean, Tony, my concern is that, again,
Yeah, we're just, if we stick to cars is fine. Personnel issues and compensation packages in public is not necessarily fine. That's closed session stuff. And compensation packages include vehicles, and I'm not convinced that that should be being discussed in open session. My 2 cents. Cars, absolutely.
Well, I understand your opinion, but, well,
I think it's unfair to start talking about chiefs and deputy chiefs' compensation packages in this forum, in open session.
well, Mayor, maybe, to Tim's point, I think I would feel more comfortable justifying this type of expenditure if I knew for a fact that there were no other vehicles that could fulfill the need here, instead of going out and spending $25,000. If we have a C's vehicle, if we have an Explorer that runs, or 1 or 2 Explorers that runs, or an Expedition that runs, there's no good reason why we can't use one of those instead of spending $25,000 on a car.
And to tail off that, and if those 3 vehicles don't suffice, then why do we still have them?
Right, then trade them in and use that to offset this expenditure.
I'm not arguing, we've established that the deputies get cars, and I kind of stand with you on that. We should talk if that's part of the compensation, but it's the how and the what.
yeah, but that's not part of the compensation. That's BS. Those people don't operate under contract. That's not part of the compensation.
So every year when we're supposed to add a vehicle to our personal income tax, because it's considered compensation, it's not really compensation.
Oh, you're talking about an IRS issue, Tim. But this isn't, when we talk about raises for department heads, we have conversations in closed session about saying, oh, by the way, they also get a car?
Well, you mean tell me that at no time in any of those conversations where it was approved for the deputy chief to get a car, that was never a conversation, it just started happening? The council never agreed that that would be an okay thing to do as part of his package? And that it shouldn't be, I mean, if him buying a car and driving back and forth every day is the same as taking a car home from work every day, I'd be surprised at that.
And Tony, if I may, and I'm splitting the hair right down the middle here. I do believe it's come up in closed door session when we talk about compensation packages. I know for at least 2 of the members before we're referring to, or 5. It has come up with 3 of the 5, and it would be inappropriate to discuss it. If we discuss it as a vehicle and what our policy is on which vehicle he gets, I'm comfortable in that, but otherwise I would like to have that taken to a closed door session.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I am going to point out that we're not talking about compensation packages right now. We have in front of us, as part of our budget workshop, a request to purchase a vehicle.
And I'm fine with that, but once we start talking about whether or not he deserves a vehicle, that's a problem. If it's which vehicle, then I'm
Yeah,
comfortable.
well, those just come as part of the anecdotal comments, just like when we've been in closed session and talk about salary adjustments, the issue of cars have come up as anecdotal comments, because it's not, nobody's done any calculations as part of total compensation packages for these individuals.
My only point there, Your Honor, was that Commissioner Mannix's words were, I'm not entirely sure why the deputy chief even gets to take a car back and forth. And that's a whole nother discussion, that's not a car.
No, I understand that. I would recommend that we withdraw this for now, until we can get a better handle on these.
The future needs of the amount of vehicles we have. So Tim, if I may, Your Honor,
Yeah.
Tim, if you could have the chief put together what he needs to keep, why, what we need, what he thinks we can sell the ones for, you know, CarMax, the other ones for, against the purchase of a new vehicle, if he can justify it. But we can't just keep adding because we got empty parking spaces, because we don't.
Well, Mark, I mean, why stop right at the fire department? I'm sure that there's other, we should have an updated report that stands, this goes back to Mayor, your point is, you know, certain municipalities say X miles, that car is going to buy new ones, as part of an overall, where are we actually at with our vehicles?
Yeah.
To take it a step further, what we can do, of course, it's not directly tied to the budget workshop today, but it would have a long-term effect on future budget workshops. We should come up with a vehicle replacement policy. A
Yeah.
written vehicle
Right.
replacement
George has done
policy.
that. And I think George is, I mean, I'm not saying, I'm just saying he's got a list of what should have been replaced, what year.
Yeah, but I'm talking about a written policy that would be adopted by the village council on all vehicles.
Yeah. And I think as a starting point for that relative discussion today is find out what we actually have and what's, you know, what state is it in.
Yes.
I think it's a legitimate request.
Right, because I mean, if they legitimately need a new vehicle, then, you know, let's give them what they need to do their job. At the same time, to Mark pointed out, it's turning into a used car lot.
I don't remember which one of you guys takes credit for the comment, but when the chief came in, police chief came in and said, I need 2 new squads. I'll agree to it if you can tell me within 2 how many cars you already have, and he didn't get the number. Right. We do need to have an inventory, and we probably should have that bounced through us to go, okay, Tim, why do we have 38 police vehicles and 34 police officers? Now, there's a lot of stuff back there for pending disposal from seizure, that's one thing, but maybe look at other places to store those too. Because I'm noticing we're running out of parking spaces in the public lot here, because the employees are taking it over, because there's no space in the parking lot there. What did we do before we bought those pieces of property and turned them into a parking lot?
Employees parked on Wilcox and Adams.
Yeah, and now we're running to that point where they are again. So we need to figure out better places to dump these seizure vehicles.
Got rid of the trailer, didn't make more money.
I don't remember a trailer, I've blocked that.
All right, what about tab 11?
So, before you, are we withdrawing
There's a vehicle in
the
there.
line item? Oh, right, there's one vehicle.
On back on to tab 10,
I'm sorry.
was there any objection to withdrawing that one vehicle for the fire department? You know, pending?
Your Honor, using this as a budget, can we just have the placeholder, but they cannot buy it without us figuring out where we're at? Or if you want to line item it out and put it back in.
Either way is okay, Commissioner, provided, because here's what I do know happens.
The pickup truck that showed up.
It just shows up.
I
think we should, at this point, take it out.
take it out and have it justified back in for the council meeting to review this all together.
Yeah.
They used to do those things.
Yes. Well, kind of, yes.
The water truck, I don't have any objection.
It just sends up smoke signals. You always know where the water department is, because you can see the smoke coming up.
Oh no, we had another water break over about Dunlap.
We used to, just another anecdotal comment, we used to have a little more control over like the purchase of things like vehicles. And it was, as part of our purchasing policy, at some point in years past, we raised the dollar threshold. And so there are some things that end up getting purchased that don't come before the council because they fall within that threshold. But it used to be at a level low enough that definitely no vehicle would have gotten purchased, you know, without coming back before us. It's just a little safeguard.
Okay.
Here you're talking about changing the language to approve vehicle purchase no matter the price. Purchasing policy.
Yeah, that's something that we certainly can talk about. probably will support it.
I wouldn't argue that.
You know, the reality is, as you well know, we meet twice a month, you know, so there never really is any type of an expense of an emergency nature that, you know, is gonna, you know, that can't wait a week or two. How about tab 11?
I vote we stop paying the city of Chicago, work for Maywood.
Yes.
Hey, that's $2.8 million to the bottom line. I'm the greatest finance commissioner ever.
I think at least hold off 6 months and earn some interest on that money, how about it?
Oh, yeah, they're paying about a 1/4%.
That's right about what Maywood owes.
Yeah, that's what the number kind of jumped at.
Yeah.
Are they just not paying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For how long?
5 years.
About $2.6 million worth.
They just stopped paying any characters. Yeah, the number of
There's like 5 that are really bad.
When did they have to increase the rates 25%?
Well, there's several communities that have,
They had to cover all their, shrinkage.
yeah. Part of it. Could be part of it. And how about tab 12? Okay, before we kind of draw to a close, you know, as you can see, a tremendous amount of work has gone into the preparation of this budget. And actually, I'm gonna make a comment first before I sing some praise. It's unfortunate that our newspaper parted us. But we have good old Jerry in the back here with the camera.
I'm sure they'll write nice things about us.
You know, before I became mayor, when we did budgets, consisted of about 3 pages. It was our budgets before I became mayor, about 3 pages. 3 pages of work. Yeah, and I'm not making this comment to pat myself on the back, I'm just stating a fact. We used to work with about 3 pages. And what you have seen, not just today, but pretty consistently now, going on 13 years, right, wrong, or indifferent about fundamental reasoning and philosophies, you have to admit, there's a tremendous amount of work that goes in here. Everything's fully disclosed. It's voluminous. Doesn't leave much to the imagination because everything's straightforward. What you see today is a product, you know, of direction over time to say, let's get it all out on the table so that we can fully vet it. But none of this is possible without having somebody at the helm capable and competent of producing the information that we work with. And this is a lot. I don't think anybody would disagree. And this particular budget workshop marks the last budget preparation that Judy Kovacs is doing for us. And she's done an outstanding job in the preparation of all of these budgets that she's had her hands on. And I wanted to publicly acknowledge Judy for the terrific job that you've done for us. Because, as you all know, she's going to be retired. I mean, and I know Tim and Vanessa and Tish and Sally, because they work upstairs alongside of Judy, they too, and I'm certain that they would echo my comments, they too see Judy here every day, Monday through Friday, after the normal work hour. I've seen her here on weekends, coming in here on weekends to do her work, you know, because of just the tedious work that goes into this. And Judy, my hand's off to you. Anybody else have anything good for the order? Commissioner Olson?
I have something I've talked to Village Administrator Gillen a couple times about over the last couple of years. We're replacing the sign at the community center. I think it's going to be very nice there. I think we should look at finding funding, which I think we might have a source for, doing the same thing at Circle of Madison. We're constantly hanging up community banners there. The stoplights are now starting to show the wear and tear of hanging up community banners there. I think it's a perfect spot for information in the village what's going on, like the community center. When there's events coming out from organizations, from the village, Groovin' Groves, the car show, all that stuff, it's another point where people, it's probably two busiest streets through town, hard to explain to Madison. I think the council should consider putting a line item in for a sign there, and then seek the funding. I know we've had offers from other billboard companies to compensate with expansion of their billboards, going from paper to digital, willing to pay for it, things like that, but I think it's something we should look at in the 2013 budget, or fiscal year, which is kind of our road. So doing it, part of public affairs or however we do that, taking a look at adding that to this year.
Well, how about if we do some homework in between now and when we circle back with this, and try to get some firm numbers, and maybe a rendering or something of what it might look like over there?
That would be great, and one of the reasons why I'm bringing up under budget is to get the line item to get us to work towards it. If you don't come up with funding, we don't come up with something good, it doesn't happen. I think that would be over the cost of our purchasing order anyway, so it'd have to come before the council. But I'd like to get the line item established for us to start the discussion. And then a second thing came up over the weekend. I'm sure we're all aware of what happened at 7-Eleven. I'm told that the people who perpetrated the crime were squatting in a foreclosed or unforeclosed, pre-foreclosed property. Do we need to establish some sort of fund through public health and safety to increase our monitoring of unoccupied, unowned, pre-foreclosed properties, something along those lines? Because if that's going on, and from my realtor side, I've seen some houses around here that has happened in, and I've reported it, but there's properties out there that aren't being maintained by the banks. We don't know what's going on inside, and we probably should. If we have pseudo-residents committing crimes at 7-Eleven, a drug house I saw in Beloit, things like that, if we could fund some sort of monitoring for them, and I don't know how to put it together, but I think we need to address the possibility that this is going to get worse before it gets better as the foreclosure market starts to dwindle in and out.
Do we have a policy currently of monitoring foreclosed homes?
We have a list that we maintain. I just want to caution, we had squatters at 841 Beloit. I don't, this crisis has been going on for 24 months. This is the first real problem, a significant problem that we've encountered. On the other side of the argument, we're sitting on about 60 properties in the queue teed up for transferring title. We're seeing huge numbers of short sales, and it's the buyer's market right now. I don't know that we're going to have as many homes on the abandoned and for as long a period as we've seen in the last 24 months. The process has become streamlined. Short sales are very quick, they're very easy. At the beginning, it was taking people 6 to 8 months to manage a short sale. Now it can be done in a matter of weeks. It's pretty quick. I'm all for greater surveillance, and it's been suggested, Tim and I talked about it, Commissioner Haskins and I talked about it, is redistributing the foreclosure list. The problem we have is the process is dynamic. I don't know how accurate the information is going to be. We get that information off of public records. There's an awful lot that are between the process of foreclosure. We're going to be seeing a second wave of strategic defaults here. People are just going to be walking away from their homes, and we're probably going to see a transient increase in the number of abandoned properties. Those won't even show up. Those won't show up anywhere for 12 to 24 months.
That's my point, is how can we figure those out? And some of it is guys on the feet on the street, or some sort of distribution responsibility among inspectors, or do we need an extra inspector or a part-time inspector? Because that can hurt home values all across. and it's a bad precedent.
It can, and I think we've, you know, after 2 years, John and I have a pretty good handle on the property maintenance issues, and my staff obviously has become more adept at, you know, finding responsible parties to manage these properties. Our goal at this point is to kind of keep the exterior clean and you know, at least give it the appearance of some semblance of maintenance. I don't think extra staff is the answer. Better surveillance perhaps, but I'm not sure how we can accomplish that, because 841 is a classic example. It's a strategic default. The guy just said, I'm out, I'm walking away, and the bank doesn't have it. So who's got it?
And how do you know
That's
if
not
the
gonna
people
show.
are allowed to be there? How do you know?
They
if
were
it's-
squatters.
But I'm saying, how do you know that from the outside? You can't.
You can't. That's kind of my
If they're,
point. I mean,
you know, entitled to be there or just.
Coordination with the water department makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
no,
that-
we need to.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It is done.
You got a situation with the property doesn't pay, maybe there's a signal between the water department, these guys are on the 30-day list, they're not a shut-off, but the building department gets a list of, these are the 30 days that have to pay, go check and see if the properties are being spotted on.
Probably a better
We could
start. I mean,
probably
although, you know, that guy
coordinate
hadn't paid his water bill and how long, and we shut him off yesterday.
Yeah, I think there was a miss on that, but a missed opportunity to shut that down. But my point is, once it gets to 30, that could be a cue from the water department to the building department to say, hey, go check these, make sure there's somebody actually there.
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to throw money at the problem. If people have suggestions, I'm all for, you know, sitting down and developing a strategy, but I just don't think extra staff is the solution.
No, I think, you know, the water is gonna be a telltale thing, and I think that I can get a better handle on it.
Yeah, if we have people strategically walking away, they're not gonna pay the water bill if they're not paying
That a
the
little
bank.
bit more closely.
It should come up quicker, and then you'll know if the property, you know, property that somebody walks away from today, probably not in bad condition, but in 90 days when we actually get to the water shut-off point, that's when it could be all torn up or.
No, I think that, you know, we could probably coordinate a little bit better with the water and, the building department, because you'll say, you know, there was a brass call, the water bill's not paid, okay, that's gonna tell us we gotta focus in on that property.
But I think we should look at those before, you know, like I said, we take 90 days to shut off. 30-day notices should cue something between buildings. Maybe
Yeah.
that's a start.
Right.
At
I
what
need
point
to
in the
look at just
process,
The entire delinquent list, not just the shut-off list.
Yes.
at what point are we getting those notices from law firms on the vacant properties?
We're closed
They're
forever.
not vacant.
What,
As soon as as soon as it's filed, we get a notice.
Was it foreclosure?
But they don't
filed?
always
Those
file.
are two different things I think you're talking about, because we get foreclosure notices, pre-foreclosure notices,
Right.
and code enforcement gets a copy of them, Tim gets a copy. But we also have vacant house registration, which I think the banks are required to do.
Right.
Is that some?
That's
I mean,
gone
I
through
don't
the
know how
process. That
goes.
means the bank has.
But there's
control
a,
of the
there's a
property.
limbo period where the
Right.
owners walked away and the bank doesn't have.
Dunlop is in a limbo.
24
It was the
months.
exact problem that needs to be addressed. That's the whole.
So
Is-
Dunlop is most likely in foreclosure,
It's in process, yes.
it's in private, but not foreclosed.
It's a strategic default. He's just walking away from it.
Yes.
So,
But so the notices that
But
we
he's
get
not
from,
signing over the title to the bank, he just
correct.
left.
No, it's not a.
He's not doing anything.
deed move.
when we've gotten the notices from the banks, is it in strategic default?
No, it's, the bank has it.
It's foreclosed.
That's my understanding.
Well, no,
I don't think
Or it's in
you're mistaken.
receivership.
no,
I
actually,
think that's.
Okay,
we
so
get
we're
a
not
notice
clear.
from the bank when it's filed.
When it's filed.
So somebody.
When what's
misses-
filed?
When a
When the
foreclosure
foreclosure is
proceeding.
filed.
A foreclosure
That just
proceeding.
means that I've missed 3, 4 payments, the bank knows they're gonna have to foreclose on it. They start the foreclosure process.
It might be 2 years.
We get that notice then. Then it's in limbo.
But that's only if the bank starts the procedure.
That's only if the
The
bank
bank's
starts.
not
the
required to start the procedure if somebody's not paying. They're still not required to start.
They don't even start blinking until you miss 3 payments. And then you can string the bank along for a while longer by saying, yeah, you know what, I think I'll get to it, I'm getting better now, blah, blah, blah. So,
I'm trying to understand the tip-off point. because I think Mark raises a valid issue. And so those notices, for instance, cannot be counted on because a bank may wait 6 months with no payments before they say, now we're gonna make a filing. When they make the filing is when they're required to give us that notice, correct?
And so you know, Your Honor, a lot of, I don't know how many times, because it's impossible to tell, but the bank may have started the foreclosure process. In other words, we get the notice, and then the people have fixed it. They
Right.
fixed their problem.
They modify
And
it,
then it stays on the
they're not
list.
paying so they can get a modification, and in the meantime, foreclosure's filed, and then, or they sell it, they short sale it, but they're still on a foreclosure list, because it was filed.
I think the water department, idea is probably a really good one.
It's one tool.
Add 30 days, let's get a notice out to
Yeah, I
these
need to
guys and
get-
let them know. See what we got.
Actually, I was gonna talk with the commissioner and Katie about that, because I need to see all the delinquencies, not just the shut-off list.
Yep.
So that's just a tool to use operationally to say, if they're at 30 days, let's go investigate.
Right.
Let's investigate.
They're still mowing their lawn, they might have missed the bill.
They called us, they made us, a partial payment or something, then at least we know they're still
Well,
involved.
because it sounds like we can use 841 Dunlop as an example, that other than water, there would have been no other tool to tip us off that something may be going on over there.
And especially in the wintertime when there's no weeds growing, there's no, other indication.
Well, other than, now we towed it yesterday, but a green Ford Explorer that was sitting in the driveway right off of Dunlop, partially hanging over the sidewalk. I don't think it's moved in close to a month. But in our community, we just kind of get accustomed to those things happening.
People park
Take a
in the
look
same
at the
spot.
13th and Circle. Can't get down that side. It's been like that for 10 years. He's got 50 motorcycles, 4
Yeah.
trailers, pickups.
He used to be my neighbor.
Is there a policy issue, privacy issue that you're using to list water listing if they're delinquent, or has the right agent?
Well, drive by the house.
I think that's, I want to check the legal on that.
We have every right to collect monies that are owed to us, and
To
we
use the
want to
list,
take
We're talking about
the,
using the list to pursue a different avenue, not to collect
no, we
money.
could call the owner and say, what's going on at your property? Are you gonna pay your water bill?
We're talking about driving by, thinking of people's windows.
Well, I'm going to knock on their door and say, we got a water bill.
What's going on? Is everything okay here?
We're talking about the water bill, it's one thing, we're talking about using it for something else.
So the person's not paying their water bills, so
You support vacant
It's,
property.
no.
I don't support, so it sounds like infringing on people's privacy.
We have people who get $3,000 water bills because there's a leak underground, or there's a leaky toilet, or something that's going on. We contact them too. It's not, we're not just using it to spy on people. We would use it to help someone, or to, maintain a safe neighborhood, or, I mean, that's our
I
job.
think you might, I'm just saying you might be.
A lot of residents call and say, the guy next door to me, the house is abandoned, or the window's broke, or I have one next door to me, I know. I called a million times. Because it's an abandoned
I
house.
mean, it's.
Yeah, I think if you're living in town, would be rejected. The neighbors call it more than.
It's not, I'm not about a personal objection, I'm talking about the legal aspect. That's
What would be
I-
illegal about it?
We're not using it, we're not collecting the money, you're going, and peeping in a window and seeing if it's, if someone's actually living there because they haven't paid their bill.
No, we're not.
That was
We have
what I
phone
heard.
numbers, we would call people, we would try to
drive
contact
by
the
and see if
owner.
there's maintenance issues. I don't see that's a problem.
But I'm saying, it's what we do. We're government, we're the village, we're supposed to
Government
maintain.
can't just-
If
Safe
she drive down the street
environment
every day,
for
day in
everyone
and day
who
out,
lives
in
here.
squad cars and checking the exact same thing without violating any starts.
Using the list, using the list is different when you,
I don't think it's illegal.
I'm just saying, check the legal or put a notice in the bill that says we can use, it takes just a notice that says we can use this for our own purposes. That resolves that issue. I'm saying there's an issue with privacy.
It's not an issue.
It's a legitimate question. We're gonna get the answer to it.
15-minute call. Resolve.
Anything else?
To Mark's idea of the sign on Circle of Madison, I think aesthetically, I would agree with you. Such a good job over the years of maintaining the integrity of that street, and it has that old town charm. Putting a digital sign on Circle of Madison to me seems kind of gaudy.
Signs hanging there aren't? Flapping in the wind, half of them rip off because we had
There for a week or so, I don't know, digital signs.
They're there for a week or so, but we probably have 52 weeks of signs up there for a week or so. I mean, I look out the window all day long, they're right there. They double them up and there's 2 events.
Your Honor, in that subject, we talked about it the other day, I think there will be a fair amount of that corner and that appointment, I guess, of the wall and things of that sort that would need to be changed. So I would advocate adding more than just for the sign, because we're gonna have to do some changing there, but that's what the rendering is for. And frankly, I mean, the guys who make the renderings don't have to put up just the sign. They can make the corner look the way they think it would look, and then we see if it looks like it's Vegas and downtown.
Yeah, because kind of one of the questions that are in my mind is, you know, do we have a double-faced sign like we have at the community center, which out of it, I think they look a little gaudy over there.
I was thinking single face.
Or do you get a single-face sign and maybe there's some type of brick structure that's built there, so it kind of, maybe something along the lines, but then again, I don't know, it would be a good idea to have it that low.
I would suggest it high because it's an corridor with a lot of cars.
We could incorporate other factors that would make it fit in. The community.
What I do know is with the community center, the company that we bought that sign from, I mean, they actually gave us a picture with the surroundings and then drew the sign into that. I mean, so we can get a visual perspective of what it looks like.
Does it have to be digital? Is there an old time answer that's like a retro look that can fit the street?
I don't know.
I'm just saying that could that be any option? Such a-
Right now, everything's an option, so yes.
On your digital sign, I didn't hear anything else. I'm saying to keep such a handsome street, with digital signs.
I wouldn't want to take a step backward and have it be something that somebody actually has to put letters on, but I'm sure there's something between a colored digital sign that flashes and Public Works got to put a letter up there trying to spell Oktoberfest. Sorry, John. It's a shot across the bow.
That's because we didn't have an all up.
Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Thank
Moved
you
by
all.
Osteen, seconded by Nance. And when you're ready, Nance, please call the roll.
Commissioner Holstein?
Aye.
Commissioner Haskins?
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz?
Aye, we're here.
Harris?
Aye.
Mayor Trumbull?
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.